Welcome to Day of the Dead here at Fullerton College. That's right. Sitting around me, well, maybe one of us is close to being to that final resting place over here. Joe to my left, Noah next to him, Ryan Osborne, the youngster, sitting to my right. Guys, we're here at Day of the Dead. We were out here last year. We're on 90.1 KBPK. It's a celebration the Fullerton has every year. And I'm going to toss it quickly to the two guys to my right and my left. Both of them are, well, I got a Russian over there, a Serbian over here, a Colombian right there. Your heritage is Mexican. So two people that should have some more of a feel of Day of the Dead than maybe Joseph and I do. So I'm going to look at the man to my left first, because Noah, we were talking last night. I was sort of going through notes and talking about things. I'm going to ask you, this day of celebration, is it something that your family embraced, or is it something that maybe your relatives that live in different areas in Mexico would embrace?
It's a little bit of both. The relatives that do live in different areas, whether in Mexico or whether they migrated here a little bit later, they still carry those traditions for Dia de los Muertos. We were talking about it, what was it, 2 weeks ago during the soccer game, correct? Ryan Osborne and I were chatting about it during halftime. My grandparents at one time did celebrate it when they were in Mexico, living in the state of Michoacan. And then when they migrated my parents over here, at least my mom's side, they discontinued the ritual. So, I never was brought up practicing any rituals for Day of the Dead. But I do have extended family that I'll see, every now and then, once a year, once every 2 years. And I've had conversations about it. And they mention it, they bring it up every now and then, especially when it is in that fall time. So that I do have a little bit more familiarity, but I can't say I personally have practiced it.
Ryan Osborne, we do know that it's really a tradition more in certain regions in Mexico, but there are some South American countries that do, because of the indigenous people that brought Day of the Dead around and attached it to the Europeans that came. There are some South American countries that do celebrate, not all of them, a few, Day of the Dead. Your Colombian heritage, so I've got to ask you, I know you know about the holiday, but is it something that's connected to you in any way or form with that Latin background?
For me, not at all. Colombians, we don't actually have anything that resembles Day of the Dead. But I do know, as you were mentioning, there are different Southern American countries that end up celebrating it, which I'm sure you'll elaborate on. One of them being Brazil, the other being Bolivia. Those are the two off the top of my head, including Nicaragua and Guatemala. They each have their own celebrations. But as a Colombian, I never actually had anything that resembled it. In fact, we didn't even have our, we'll say, Halloween here in the United States. We didn't have that over in Colombia. It was simply every once in a while, we'll say once a year on your grandfather's birthday or your great-grandmother's birthday, the family would
So usually, typically that day, they celebrate all the lives that were lost from any young person, whether it was a baby or anyone before the age of 16 to 18 is usually the age of the cutoff. The second day, that's when they celebrate the adults that have deceased in their life, and they go to their graves. The third day is usually when they offer the gifts to both the angelitos, the kids, and the adults that have passed in their lives. They come to their graves. That's when they bring the flowers as well, the marigolds. They bring the food of the person, the deceased person, the food that they typically like. It can range from anything, but typically it's a lot of tamales and pan dulce, sweet bread. So there's a lot of that, but it's typically a 3-day celebration.
Joseph, we come from basically European backgrounds. Like I said, you've got more of a Russian background. I come from a family that my dad came from Serbia, and then my mom's got an Irish background, sort of like this gentleman to my right here. But is this anything that you've really dealt with? I mean, when you look at your family and the heritage of your family, did you ever have anything that would be close to this celebration when somebody passed away, or do we go to the dark funeral side of the Russian who, let's bury him, cry our eyes out like most Serbians do, and go away?
That's pretty much it. It's the, you're dead, we'll put you in the ground, we'll feel bad, and then we'll move on. And that's it for the most part. For a October kind of holiday, it's growing up here, Halloween, and dealing with all of that cavity-filled fun candiness. But yeah, I can't say, at least growing up, there's anything out of the ordinary that was of this season and of remembering the dead that was imparted to me, at least, from grandparents or anything.
Well, we realized that Day of the Dead was actually a summer holiday, and because of the Judeo-Christian attitude that was brought into these new worlds and handed to the native indigenous people of those countries, then Christianity sort of creeped in and it sort of mixed up like when you're mixing that bowl at the end of the day. And the Day of All Saints, which is closer to October, November, sort of pulled Day of the Dead with it, and it went from a summer holiday to now a November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd holiday. Not actually October, but it's actually the first part of November. Day of the Dead starts. And when we look at that, I mean, guys, I can tell you for a fact with my family background that when my dad passed away, we had a party with candy, every sort of food that my dad ate, cake. Candy was a theme because my dad was a diabetic and would always sneak candy on his own. So all the relatives were told to bring a box of candy. I brought 5 boxes of Jelly Bellies, the big boxes, and laid them all out. There were Snickers, Milky Ways, and everything else. And everybody told stories about Bob. They were funny stories about Bob, my dad. We laughed about him, and there were people that would hear the same stories again. The grandchildren would tell the stories that they loved. Us kids would tell things that my dad did, good and bad. And, of course, the bottle of brandy was out there because my dad loved his 4 ounces of Christian Brothers every night. And we all poured a shot of Christian Brothers and took that shot for my dad. It was that real celebration of life, not that mourning of somebody passing. And that's really, Noah, what I look at Day of the Dead. That's the feel that I get here when people tell me the history of Day of the Dead. I get that feeling of we're celebrating, even if it was a few years that you were on Earth, we're celebrating that life you lived, not necessarily the life you're now walking into. I don't know, am I right or wrong on this?
No, you're completely right, and that's one thing I like about my family and how they celebrate funerals is when there's a funeral, you were chatting about it, how you and your family would gather around, talk about your deceased friend, kind of laugh a little bit too, and that's one thing where we have at our funerals too. We kind of tell stories about the deceased person, but in a light manner. Sometimes we make fun of them. Sometimes we point out a little bit of their flaws here and there. But at the end of the day, we don't leave a funeral crying. We usually, and if it is crying, it's more tears of joy and tears of celebration.
And I'm going to go back to you because I know you said your heritage doesn't have the Day of the Dead holiday. But again, I've got to feel like as it interweaved its way through South America, through central part of Mexico, southern Mexico, where it's very big in southern Mexico, the southern regions, there's got to be part of that that weaved its way through your Colombian heritage where you may treat the souls of those who passed in the same way Day of the Dead looks at them and rejoices about the lives that they lived.
Well, I've had the fortune of not actually having to celebrate the life of someone in my family as of yet, but from the stories that I have been told, it is a matter of celebration in which, like Noah was saying earlier, you take the top foods that person loved or whatever they were really, really into. For example, my great-great-grandfather was a huge, huge lover of empanadas. And so when they celebrated his life, there was empanadas for everyone who was there. And it was a celebration of the fact that he was a person, a patriarch of the family. So that is from what I'm told. It was all a celebration with empanadas, with food, and nobody ended up going away from that, not necessarily funeral, but celebration of life, hungry. Nobody went away from it sad. Everybody was happy when they ended up going home. Mournful, but still happy at the end as well. So when you look at it from a Colombian perspective, it's more that celebration of life. Nobody necessarily says it's like Dia de los Muertos, it's a pronounced holiday. Nobody says, oh, we're gathering specifically because we want to remember that person. But again, it's always that date where you could go from family to family, and it's a different date in the year, but they always get together on that same day every year. Some people may not even know why they get together on that date. It could be March 18th, and they won't know. But nonetheless, it's something that their family has as a tradition where they just meet on that day. And for example, my family, it was always the night before Christmas because one of our family members, I'm not even sure who, but it was their favorite day, the day before Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas, and that's when the entire family gets together. So from my family's perspective, it's always been that one day that you end up celebrating the family all together, those who are alive, those who have passed on as well. But from a Colombian culture, we don't necessarily see it as much. Now, I do know from my Venezuelan people that I know, and also Venezuelan friends that I have, is that they are more pronounced in celebrating, look, we want to celebrate grandmother. We want to celebrate grandfather, and that's the reason why we are gathering today. And we're doing X, Y, and Z specifically because of those people. But as far as I know, as I have another Colombian friend apparently walking down the walkway here, but un paisano.
Bringing empanadas, I hope?
One can only hope.
Okay.
But from a Colombian culture, it's not necessarily there.
Okay, I'm going to throw it at the three young guys here because I've been around Orange County for too many years. And because of our political climate and the way that we look at it, and of course, we're all pretty open-minded, us three that are sitting here, us four all together. We do sports and everything else. I have to ask, and then I really want you to chime in on this, Joseph.
All right.
How important is it for a Mexican-American or an American-Mexican, however you want to phrase your heritage, same with you as a Colombian with a little shade of Irish thrown in, somebody with a European-Russian background. How important is it, and I'm serious about this, to celebrate moments like this, to inform people that these are cultures, these are part of cultures that exist? Should it just be something that happens, and if people show up, great, or only Hispanic people show up, great, the white guy doesn't show up, we don't care? I mean, really, how important is something like Day of the Dead on this campus to all the students here, or how important should it be?
I think it should be extremely important because one of the most diverse places you can go to in the country is a college campus, whether it's junior college or university. And so there's a lot of diversity here. So there's people from all different backgrounds, sometimes people from out of the country, out of the area even. We work with the football team a lot, and how many of those players are out of state? So they, walking through this Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead celebration here on the campus, they can kind of get exposure, and maybe the areas they're from in the country don't have a big Mexican population or have any kind of festivals where they celebrate something like this. So it kind of opens their eyes and basically kind of almost acts like as a form of education, kind of educate people who didn't have this knowledge in their background on what Day of the Dead is. Because there's a lot of people who just assume, oh, Day of the Dead, it's a Mexican Halloween, or it's a Mexican version of Halloween, something like that means. But now they could come here to Fullerton College campus, explore around a little bit, visit the nice booths, walk around, kind of get a taste of the culture and learn more about Day of the Dead.
Younger white guy. You and I are the two white guys at the table. You know, let's be realistic. We're the two white guys at the table, sitting with two Latin brothers on either side of us. So, I mean, I'm going to look at you and throw it in your face. Should it be something that we should see more of?
I think so. So if we go, like, to me, and being European and talking about my grandparents, unfortunately, in the past year and a half, 2 years, I lost a grandmother, two grandfathers. My grandmother, then the two grandfathers. For the grandmother, we didn't really hold a service. My dad and my grandfather were like, yeah, why? She's dead. She won't know the difference. My grandfather wanted the same thing. So both of them was a non-event. I think the only reason my other grandfather had a service was because he was a serviceman. He was a paratrooper. And so he had a military funeral. But I think that's about it that my family did. And I think events like this and educating people about this, I think it teaches people that we shouldn't mourn, we should celebrate. And I think that's something we're seeing a lot more in American culture. A lot of people are wanting to have parties instead of funerals. And whether people want to admit it or not, just I think by virtue of, I'm going to butcher it, Dia de los Muertos existing, I think that whether they realize it or not, it's having an effect on people in surrounding communities and how they're choosing to view death. And I think it's good to view it in a more positive way. And then you have things like Coco last year, which sadly for me was my biggest dose of what the holiday is and what it means being a
white boy.
Exactly. Uneducated white boy about this holiday. That's kind of my take on it. And I think it's something people need to be open-minded about.
Ryan, we tease each other. We all tease. We do the coaches show. We've done the coaches show together, and we tease about our different nationalities. that are in the group when we see points of view. But you and I have been around each other long enough, and Noah brings it up about the football team. But I mean, it hits home here in Orange County. We have a huge Latino population, the largest Day of the Dead celebration, Santa Ana, which will be happening next week in our sister city. So, I mean, I look at the two Latin young men sitting next to me, which I grew up with a huge Hispanic population around me when I grew up in the late 50s, early 60s here in Anaheim. But I've got to ask you, too, like I said, to know, I mean, how important is this? Do we just poo-poo it and say, oh, let's look at the pretty mask. Gee, look, I think I'll get a fish taco. That was great. Oh, hey, no Mexican Cokes? Oh, man, let's go home. Or should it really be that event that we say, hey, you need to, if I'm your neighbor, you need to know more about me, and knowing more about me might be because you come to a celebration like Day of the Dead.
I think it's really, really important to have something like this because you mentioned it, there's so many different Latino cultures, and it's not just all one because you could put that under just the Hispanic title, but there's so many different Latino cultures. There's Guatemala, there's Mexican, there's Colombian, there's Venezuelan, you could add in Bolivian, Ecuadorian, Peruvian, all into that mix, all here in Southern California, one of the most diverse places on the face of the earth if you're looking at it by ratio and population. So I think part of the importance of having a Dia de los Muertos celebration is the fact that not only is it and to take Mark's quote, the uneducated white boys who come over here and end up learning about this, it's also other Latino cultures who, like myself, I had no idea about Dia de los Muertos. I had no idea that people gathered like that. I didn't know anything about the event until I came to Fullerton College as a student and learned that they were going to go through, I believe it was their 22nd annual Dia de los Muertos celebration at the time. I had no idea what Dia de los Muertos was. And I grew up in Southern California. I was born here. I had no idea. My family didn't celebrate it. Neither my Irish side of my family nor my Colombian side of my family. We had no idea. There was no celebration like that. So I think Dia de los Muertos allows for people to just understand where other people are coming from, understand what their views are on death, what their views are on celebrating family members, what their views are and what their worldview is through these types of glasses.
Well, you look at it, Noah, I mean, the hint of Halloween that we brought up is because they do on the first day for the innocents, the Day of Innocence. They give out candy, they give out money. On the third day, they give flowers out. So you have all of that. So the aspect of Halloween gets cultivated into it. But I'm going to go back and talk to you and Ryan about it, because Ryan sits over here, which I think sometimes is forgotten. People will look and say, oh, only the old white guys don't know about it. Or maybe the black kids from the South don't know about Day of the Dead. But there could be that Latino community that looks at the other side of the Latino community and goes, oh, my God, what are you doing that for? How come you're wearing the strange mask? How come you're doing this? It's ludicrous. Look at what you're making us look like. I think there's a part of this where this should be embraced so that at least as we go on and we become a much smaller world, which I think we are, that the more I know about you when you do something, it may be quirky to me, might even bother me, but at least I understand it.
And that's a big part of events like this, kind of spreading the education so that we all are more familiar with it. I mean, my family is from Mexico. Both my parents migrated here to the United States, and even they didn't transfer that culture. So if I had never communicated with my extended family members that still live in Mexico or, now live here in the United States, I would never have an experience with it too. It's just that I was able to reach out to them. And the biggest thing when you have events like this and you see outsiders coming in to learn about the culture, or at least coming to this event, what you don't want to see is, people kind of culture vulture, or people just kind of here to post about it on social media, because that's a huge part of things, right? Whether it's Chinese New Year or St. Patrick's Day and some other holidays from different cultures. People like to just sometimes, hey, I was here. I had, like you said earlier, I had a fish taco. I bought a tamale. I took a picture with this cool sign. Now I'm part of this culture. And that's the one thing that we don't want to see, is we want to see people come here, actually learn about it, and respect it. And, whether you like it or not, that's completely up to you. But at least now you're educated on the topic, and you can make that decision on whether you want to either celebrate in that culture or, accept it or not.
We're here at Day of the Dead at Fullerton College, streaming on 90.1 KBPK. I got Ryan Osborne to my right, Noah Alvarez to my left. The Russian, like most Russians, is looking at the rest of the territory and seeing what he can take over. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll be back in a little while when we look at that. Don't forget, when you look at 90.1 KBPK, we do a lot of college sports here. Noah Alvarez has been the voice of Fullerton College women's volleyball so far this season. He's been out here for men's soccer. He's also on the sidelines for Fullerton College football every time we have a home game and away game with Corey Nealon and myself. And he's also the host of the Coaches Show here on 90.1 KBPK. Don't just turn away from KBPK and say, "Oh, you guys are talking about Day of the Dead. What are you, an information center?" No, we're a music group. We're a sports group. We're a news group. We're a multifaceted media group here, and somebody like Noah Alvarez has his fingers and his toes in every aspect of it. Ryan Osborne is back in the studio. Him and Joseph Pavlenko make sure that everything works well while we're streaming. We're going to be out here. We're going to get a few more guests to hopefully come over to our table and sit down and talk to us a little more about Day of the Dead. We're going to try and catch and see what's going up on the stage. Hopefully the lighting is good enough so that you can see what's going on the stage with us tonight when we look at it. So, Noah, let's flip away from Day of the Dead for just a second till we get a couple guests come out here. You've been around Fullerton College sports this year. You were last year, but you're much more involved this year, being one of the hosts with Ryan Osborne and Victor, who does a little tag for us on the Coaches Show. We look at women's volleyball this year. We talk a little Fullerton College football. They carry the mantle. They have the championships. Everybody goes rah, rah. But you've been out there with those women calling volleyball games, and it looks like the women for Fullerton College, be it in the pool for water polo or be it on the court for volleyball or the grass for soccer, they seem like they're carrying the mantle this year here at Fullerton College.
And you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, that was the most eye-opening thing when I came to Fullerton College, is that not just the football team is great, not even just the soccer team is great. All around, the sports are very special. I mean, you mentioned the water polo team. They lost in the state championship last year, the women's did. The men's basketball team, they won the state championship. Fullerton went undefeated. The football team, they didn't lose a game last year, and they won back in 2016 and 2017. So all these teams here, the athletic program is really special. And what you like to see, because we were at the women's volleyball game last Wednesday or just yesterday when they were taking on Irvine Valley College, you like to see the unity and the uniformity as far as athletes hanging out with each other, coming to support one another. I know they were having an event where they were giving away food for the student athletes, but nonetheless, they could have just, taken the food and left after they stayed. Most of them stayed for all 3 sets in the volleyball game, and despite the loss, they're all supportive of one another. That's one thing I do really like, because you don't see that at a lot of community colleges. I had the luxury of going to Golden West College when I first came out of high school, and that's where I completed my associate's degree. But that year and a half I spent as a member of the football team, I didn't really get to know anybody else from the soccer team or from the men's water polo team, or I know they didn't have any basketball teams, but I didn't get to meet anybody from any other sport really and kind of branch out. And so one thing I do like about Fullerton College is the community you sense between the sports, one supporting another, and they're all at such high level, performing at such high levels, whether it's the football team, whether it's the soccer team, whether it's in the pool with the water polo teams. You see so much talent here at Fullerton College, which is truly impressive, and I think a lot of students sometimes don't even realize it.
Well, and since we're here for an event that is dealing with diversity, which Day of the Dead does so that people can get educated and know what some of these celebrations by other cultures are, you look at the sporting teams, and of course you were out there at soccer, so we have a very heavy Latin feel for the soccer, but still we have Latin players on our football team. We have Latin players in water polo. We have Latin players playing volleyball. So when we look at the Latin community and we look at community colleges in general, especially here at Fullerton College, it's something, since you've been going here, Noah, you have to look around your classroom because you've taken classes here. You look around your classroom and it's not the old days of Orange County where if you saw a face of color, you went, hey, look who's over in the corner. There's Corey Nalen is sitting over there. It really has to be something that I find engaging and enthralling if you're a young person to go here to Fullerton College, especially if you're associated with sports like you are, to see these multi-cultures interact with each other to bring success home to this college.
And that's the thing you love to see about Orange County in itself. I mean, you look at Santa Ana, Anaheim, huge Latino populations. A lot of them are Mexican. But then you go down the street and you head into Garden Grove and Westminster. A huge population of Vietnamese and Koreans. And even in Garden Grove, you can look at the Pacific Islander population that's spread around there as well. And it's just as diverse in Fullerton. It's just as diverse in Buena Park, in La Habra. And so you see a lot of diversity here, and it's beautiful when they come together, especially on the field of competition, to perform and play for the sports here at Fullerton College.
And when we talk about diversity, let's take a look as we're going to try and go over to the stage and see what's going on there. Ryan Osborne's going to give us a little feel of what's happening on the stage right now. Going to try and pick up a little sound, see if we got a little music going on there, because we'll have celebrations all night long here on 90.1 KBPK.
One result being Dia de los Muertos. Now observed on November 1st and 2nd, the tradition was brought to the United States, specifically to Los Angeles, by cultural activists during the Chicanx movement of the 1970s. The public celebration first took place at Fullerton College in 1993 as a result of the efforts of our now faculty emeritus, Professors Adela Lopez and Jerry Padilla. Are you all in the quad somewhere? Can we give them a hand for our professors who have over 90 years of combined service at Fullerton College? There's Padilla. Thank you. The event has grown to include 60 ofrendas that you see in the quad, the most ever in our history. Dia de los Muertos is one of the most recognizable annual events at Fullerton College, and it's generously funded by the Student Equity Committee.
Hola, buenas noches y bienvenidos. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Los ancestros y la conmemoración que se practica sobre todas las culturas y religiones incluyen religiones y tradiciones indígenas y católicas. Comunidades indígenas en México revoltaron, resistieron y acomodaron los resultados de la violencia de España, de la conquista española, y uno de los resultados fueron el Día de los Muertos, que ahora se celebra y observamos los días 1 y 2 de noviembre. La tradición fue traída aquí a los Estados Unidos, específicamente a Los Ángeles, por activistas de cultura durante el movimiento chicano de 1970. La celebración pública primeramente fue aquí en Fullerton College en 1993, hace más de casi 26 años. El resultado de estos esfuerzos son de una faculty emeritus, los profesores Adela López y Jerry Padilla y sus estudiantes hace 26 años. Hay que darles un fuerte aplauso, por favor. Este evento ha crecido, ahora acumulan 60 ofrendas. Las más ofrendas que se han dado desde que empezó en 1993. El Día de los Muertos es uno de los eventos más reconocidos anualmente aquí en Fullerton College, y la Comité de Estudiantes de Equidad son los que lo cumplen. Los invitamos a todos que por favor pongan algo o añadir algo a la ofrenda de comunidad. Si es una foto o un momento, están invitados a hacer eso. También están pintando caritas aquí al lado izquierdo, y hay otras actividades para disfrutar aquí en el patio que incluyen jugar lotería, decorar calaveras y una cabina de fotos. Por favor, visiten las cabinas de comida enfrente aquí en el patio y también están vendiendo camisetas, aretes acá de este lado en la derecha.
So we just want to invite folks to add to our community ofrenda here in the center. You'll see in the main circle there are 2 tables that were built by Ethnic Studies, Chicanx Contemporary Issues class. But it's a community ofrenda, so if you have a photo or a memento of a loved one that you'd like to include, please do so. There are also posters entitled Presente or Present, because one of the critical pieces of Day of the Dead is that we call forth our ancestors and we invite them to celebrate this day with us today. And so please, we invite you to write the names of your ancestors, biological or otherwise. We want to call them in with us today. We also want to let you know that there's free face painting in the quad. Thank you to Trendsetters. And other activities throughout. So you'll find a booth to play loteria, to decorate calavera skulls, a photo booth, and other activities. In the southwest corner, in front of or near the 200 building by the cafeteria, there are food vendors. The long line is because this is the first year we have a taquero. We're giving out free plates of tacos, so please help yourself. We know food is such an important part of celebrating with our communities. And please support the student organizations. They're offering food and beverages to fundraise for all the great work that they do throughout the year. We also want to invite you to the 1000 building where the art gallery is opening a new show. So please visit that throughout the night. We also want to announce, I was just given some information that the city of Anaheim is working to establish Indigenous Peoples Day in October and replace it with Columbus Day. The celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day has been happening every day, right? But officially, since 1977, and different cities have been taking this on. It's still not a national holiday as it should be, and we need to really work in our local communities to ensure that Indigenous peoples are recognized every single day, but at the very least, on Indigenous Peoples Day. So please go see Masat if you want to check out how you can get involved. Please, they're doing great work. They need signatures to get this passed in the city of Anaheim. It's already happening in surrounding cities, so it's really important that we do that work locally. We also just want to say, if folks are sitting in the front, this is the first year that we have chairs because we really want to honor our elders and make sure they have a comfortable space to sit. And so if you see an elder or maybe a community member who has a physical impairment or a disability who needs a seat, we ask that you please offer your seat for them.
Queremos anunciar que la ciudad de Anaheim está tratando de cambiar el día de Cristóbal Colón a el día de la gente indígena aquí. Entonces están pidiendo firmas en una mesa acá del lado a su lado izquierdo. Oh, ahí están, miren, están dando la seña. Por favor, pasen por allí, den su firma para que puedan cambiar ese día para el día de la gente indígena, que es muy importante. También queremos recordarles que hay asientos aquí enfrente. Hay que tener conciencia de que a veces la gente de tercera edad o más grandes o una gente que tiene una disabilidad, por favor ofrezcanles su asiento si tienen uno disponible. Y también hay comida, los tacos están allá en la esquina y son gratis, por favor pasen a comer y a estar con nosotros un momento en comunidad. En este momento quisiera presentarles a presidente Schultz.
Now we just want to bring up the president of Fullerton College, Dr. Greg Schultz, to welcome you to our community.
Good evening. Hello. How is everyone? I didn't hear you. How is everyone? Excellent. Excellent. Welcome to Fullerton College. It gives us so much joy to welcome you. Hopefully it's not your first visit to Fullerton College. If it's not, welcome back. And if it is, welcome to Fullerton College. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of Fullerton College, we're so happy to have you here. This is your college. It gives us great joy to offer community events like this wonderful event as a tradition of Fullerton College. I especially would like to thank our social science division and ethnic studies department in particular, always leading and helping coordinate this wonderful event. So thank you to our faculty. And I hope to visit with you throughout the night. But please enjoy, and I hope you always come back to Fullerton College. Thank you.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah, you can come.
Okay, so now we want to begin our official welcome and opening. I'd like to bring up Michelle Castillo. Michelle is a yes, let's give her a warm round of applause. Michelle Castillo is a Hashimen Chicana community advocate and sacred land and ocean protector. Born and raised in Orange County, Michelle learned community activism and medicine ways at a very early age through her grandmother, Tomita Castillo.
Ahora en este momento quisiera presentarles a Michelle Castillo, que va a dar la bienvenida y va a abrir la ceremonia. Es Hashimen Chicana, es un advocate de la comunidad y protege la tierra sagrada y también protege el océano. Es nacida y también es del condado de Orange County y ella aprendió su activismo comunitario y medicinas desde que estaba muy chiquita de su abuelita Jovita Castillo. Por favor, un aplauso. Gracias.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Fullerton College. My name is Michelle Castillo, and I am Chicana, and I am also from the Hashimen Nation. That is where you are standing right now. My tribe is over 12,000 years old, and we resided here in Orange County, along with the Tonga people. And so the proper way to start any type of event, especially something as dear as Dia de los Muertos, is to honor the people before us. And so those are the Hashimen and the Tonga. Speaking of the Hashimen and Tonga, before I get started on the blessing, I would just like to talk a little bit about what's going on at in Long Beach, at Cal State Long Beach. We have a sacred site out there, a burial ground, and our ancestors are currently being desecrated. They're dumping soil on our sacred land, and so it's very disrespectful to us, right? You wouldn't do that at a cemetery. You wouldn't disrespect an altar. You wouldn't disrespect a drum. And so currently, right now, we're fighting for our sacred land. So yes, I am a land protector, and I am also a protector of the ocean. As Native people, that's what we are here for, to not only protect each other, but also to protect the past, to protect our history. I want you guys to remember one thing: we have to struggle every day to be indigenous. We struggle every day as Native people. And when I say Native people, I'm talking about the natives from the north to the south. We are all Native American. Oh. And with that, I'd like to get started with an opening prayer. Creator, I ask that you guide each and every single one of these beautiful people that have come here tonight, Creator. Help them to honor and to remember their beautiful ancestors. Help them to remember their roots, their medicine ways, and their traditions. As the altars are out here tonight, Creator, turn those tears into happy tears. Create memories for these beautiful people. And as this breeze comes to breathe through us, Creator, remind each and every single one of these people, Creator, that that breeze is the breath of our ancestors. The sun is the light from our ancestors. The moon is the light from our ancestors. The water.
Tenemos que reconocer quiénes somos. También tenemos que reconocer que vamos hacia adelante, y estas familias de danza nos dan esta importancia para nuestras generaciones en el futuro de educación también.
We just want to invite folks to come up. Please share your energy with the group.
So we're back here at Day of the Dead. We see the events going on the stage. I'm sitting next to Ryan Osborne, our resident Colombian, sitting next to the old white guy. Noah Alvarez is out there looking for a possible interview here on Day of the Dead. Nice turnout when you think about it. You look at what's going on the stage. They have native dancers performing dances that deal with the heritage of the time. And of course, one of the things when we talked about the indigenous people, realized Day of the Dead was not embraced by the indigenous people of northern Mexico. That came much later. It was the central and southern regions that embraced Day of the Dead. And of course, that gets explained also here as this program goes on, Ryan. It's not just come out, eat some food, look at the pretty costumes. Hey, I might be able to buy something. Ooh, that looks nice. It really is a story of the heritage of Day of the Dead and the celebration of Mexican life, not only here in California, but in the beautiful country of Mexico.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about at the Open, in which a lot of people think that Dia de los Muertos is really just an emphasis on, oh, it's the Hispanic Halloween. That's what it is, right? No, it's actually more the Mexican culture, more the Central American culture, and the occasional Southern American country as well. It's to celebrate what their family is, to celebrate tradition, to celebrate their culture. And as you mentioned, too often you'll get people who think Day of the Dead, oh, okay, that means I get to have some nice little tacos, maybe a fish taco, maybe al pastor, and then I get to, as you said, go out and find myself some nice merchandise, maybe get my face painted, and then walk out saying this is all one big little celebration, but it doesn't mean anything. No, to the people who are participating, this means a lot. Perhaps it's the most important day of the year if you're looking at it from a cultural perspective, because this is a chance to look at their family and to say, I am celebrating who I am. I am celebrating the people who came before me, who all had an impact on who I am as a person.
Well, let's look at Orange County, and I mean, let's go back to the youngsters. Ryan Osborne's a youngster sitting next to me. Noah Alvarez was a youngster sitting next to me. Orange County, agricultural. And when we go around Fullerton, we see the little houses down Commonwealth. Maybe you might see some of them inside certain areas and pockets of Fullerton. Many of those little houses are part of the rancheros that used to be out in this area. And they were the little homes that the workers worked here. So when we talk about Hispanic heritage, Ryan, I mean, Orange County is enriched in the Hispanic heritage. I mean, the farmlands that were down here, we were called Orange County because of why? We produced oranges here. Agriculture was huge. That's why when you look at this community college, it really was for those students that couldn't go to college, but they could come to here and they could learn that trade, be it in that area of agriculture or something connected with agriculture. And that's why Fullerton College became a branch of Fullerton High School here in this region. So when we do Day of the Dead, we really go back and say, it's not only about the way they celebrate the passing of lives with their families. Let's go a little further back and look at, instead of all poo-pooing and talking about the wall and things like that, and this is not political, this is just life, we ought to take a hard look at where the heritage of the Mexican families and then families like your relatives that came from South America, that migrated up in this direction, and then, because it happens too often, Ryan, we know it, what are you, Mexican? You're Latin? I mean, I'm serious,
Yeah.
you know, and you can laugh at it because we've laughed at each other about it. But it really is one of those things, Ryan, that they look at you and they go, oh, so you're Mexican, right? I think it's that thing where we need to look at the Latin heritage in Southern California and realize, like you already said, people from Guatemala, people from Argentina, people from Bolivia, people from Colombia. You can go on Nicaragua, you can go Panama, you can go on, and then Mexico itself, and all the different regions in Mexico. You've talked about going down there with the relatives when you picked up You do, don't you have, is it your grandfather that lives in Mexico or a friend of your grandmother's?
No, it is my grandfather. My grandfather actually lives in Tijuana, so that way he could be closer to his family as well and still be in a Spanish-speaking culture. As when you look at what you're talking about, Mark, the entire Latino community, growing up in Southern California, people have to realize this land, yes, it was indigenous land, followed by Spanish land, followed by Mexican land, and back when it was Mexican land, there was 2 families stretching from all the way to East LA into Riverside County that owned all of this land. In fact, the land that now covers Orange County today was owned by one person. You go from Riverside County all the way up to around El Monte and all the way down to San Clemente. That was all one person who owned all of this land, and then it eventually branched out and was leased, and then the American-Mexican War that ended up changing the entire landscape of this land. But when you look at it, Orange County has a very rich Mexican culture, a very rich Hispanic culture altogether. And you go back to what you were talking about. Myself growing up in Southern California, yes, I've encountered people who have looked at me and essentially just looked at me and said, "Oh, you're Mexican." No, actually, I'm Colombian, but I love my Mexican friends. I love my Mexican family members that I have as well. No, but you're Mexican. Or, where did you come from? Oh, I was born in Orange. No, but where did you come from? Oh, well, my family is here from Orange County. No, but where did you come from?
Yeah.
Yes, I've grown up with that. But when you see something like Dia de los Muertos, it gives people a chance, and as you said, it gives people a chance to just look at the entire Latino community and say, oh, wow, this is different for each person. It's a different experience for each person. It's a different way of life for each person. That's what this event does for people.
Well, you realize that Mr. Padilla, who used to be here at Fullerton College, head of international studies, him and I would talk about Orange County in the 50s because we were both here. And he came on and did a couple interviews with me for Fullerton College football. And we would talk about how it was the white and brown brothers that grew up next door. I mean, if I went into somebody's neighborhood and met your grandmother and grandfather, I should at least understand Spanish, and I should just accept the food that got placed in front of me because no matter what it looked like, and I was a little, afraid of it, Grandma expected me to eat it, and you did, and then you got accepted to the family. There was never that time that, and I mean this with a loving respect to my friends from the past, there was never any of that time when I went down with the Moraleses or the Bourbons or anybody else. You walked in the house, you felt uncomfortable because it was another heritage. You were accepted, you were part of the family, and I think the thing that this celebration does, hopefully when my grandchild grows up, my grandchild may be bi or trilingual and may realize that, yeah, English may be a universal language, but there are other languages that are universal languages. I've asked you more than once, do you speak Colombian? Because I come from a Serbian background, and neither my sister nor I speak Serbian. My dad did. And I ask you that because, Ron, I think too many times people, especially young people, and I put myself in this category because at one time, yeah, believe it or not, I was young, we sort of throw our heritage away. We don't embrace it because we want to be assimilated into the society we live into now. And we lose something there. The stories that I'm sure your family could tell us, we would probably laugh at somebody, say, oh my goodness, to other ones, and just shake our heads like, wait a minute, is that really true? And I mean, you've at least embraced being Colombian in the years that I've known you.
But see, that's where it goes back to growing up here in Southern California. Yes, it's diverse, but there's also, as you said, trying to assimilate into the culture. For the first 13, 14 years of my life, I wanted nothing to do with speaking Spanish because I figured, hey, I'm growing up here. That just means I got to speak English because that's what I'm being told when I'm in school. I got to speak English. I have to be able to read and speak English. So it was a matter of me just saying, well, yeah, I'm Colombian, but I'm also here in Southern California. I'm in the United States. That's what I'm about. But then at one point, it's just a realization of, everyone here has something different to offer. Everyone in Southern California, everyone in the world has a different heritage to them. It's realizing that the people that I knew who were white have different ethnic backgrounds. As you said, you're Serbian. It's not, oh, if you're white, you're automatically Scandinavian. You could be Russian. You could be Scandinavian. You could be Swiss. You could be from London, England. You could have different backgrounds. The people that I know that are Latino, you could be Argentinian, Mexican, Nicaraguan, Panamanian, Venezuelan, Peruvian, Ecuadorian, and it's still all a different culture as well. So growing up in Southern California, there was a realization of, you know what? I can be a proud Colombian Irish person. I can be a proud person in the Latino community. I can learn to speak Spanish, and I finally did start speaking Spanish at the age of 13 with my great-grandmother. I can speak Spanish to her now and say, you know, I can have a full conversation with my great-grandmother. I know all about the Colombian culture because now I'm listening. Now I'm embracing that culture. Now I'm embracing the fact that I do have another ethnic background as well. When you look at Dia de los Muertos, it is that celebration factor. You may have 2 or 3 people here, youngsters, kids who are out here who are thinking to themselves, well, I grew up in the United States, so that means I got to speak English, right? I can only speak English. That's the way that things go. Coming to something like this with Dia de los Muertos can change that for them. They can realize, wow, you know what? I am a part of this culture. This is something that we can celebrate and that everyone will embrace. It's not going to be something like, oh yeah, we have Dia de los Muertos, but we don't talk about that. It's something that they can look at and say, you know what? I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of the traditions that we have, and we can celebrate it loud and in front of everyone.
Well, and realize when you talk about Day of the Dead too, there's an internal aspect of Day of the Dead. We all look around for peace when we get older, or if something happens to us physically, people search for peace. And when you talk about knowing that people are going to celebrate my life when I pass on, hopefully that when you get older and somebody asks you about radio and doing the sports you did and everything else, I hope you sit down and chuckle every once in a while and say, man, I worked with this old guy who just, you know, he came out of nowhere. He would do some of the strangest things and then tell a story about Mark and laugh about me. And then realize, you know, Mark enjoyed life and everything about life, and that's what life is about. The thing that I always like about celebrations like this, Ryan, is that people will look and say, oh, well, I ate Colombian empanadas. Oh, well, Ryan told me, oh, therefore I understand the Colombian culture. It's that thing that when you sit down and go to something or an event like this, you may find out that much, a quarter of an inch, about a group that you never knew. And then when something comes up, be it political, geopolitical, for whatever reason something happens, you may understand why they reacted that way. You may understand why they're upset, why there's tears, why they don't get. And this is why when something like Fullerton College or the city of Santa Ana or the city of Fullerton puts on an event like this, why we do it here at 90.1 KBPK to say, hey, it's not us about broadcasting. It's about you coming out and being out here with us and talking to Amber and having her explain. I mean, I'm waiting for Noah to bring her over because we could probably spend the next 2 hours with her on the air, picking up where Jerry left off when he used to be out here, and talk about the whole thing of Day of the Dead and what it really means to be a Mexican. As strange as that sounds, I would love to sit with a group of Mexican people that would, like I've done with Corey Nalen and his family. Corey Nalen's my broadcast partner. His family's African American, black gentleman, that I've sat down and had serious conversations with his mother about growing up in a black family. Eye-popping, eye-opening, mind-exploding. I have things said to me that you wouldn't say in a crowd. Nothing would be more fantastic to sit down and really have a Mexican family right now come on the air with us and say, let us tell you why we celebrate this day.
Well, and Mark, it goes back to what you've been talking about for years, or as long as I've known you. It's the listening factor. we go out, we do interviews for the Coaches Show, we do interviews for Fullerton College football and basketball and all the different sports that we do as well. But from just my perspective, it's kind of the same thing. When I was in my second semester at the radio and sports classes under yourself and Corey Nayland, I had no knowledge of water polo whatsoever. None whatsoever. I could read a little bit about it, but I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand water polo. I could even go out to the pool and not understand a single thing. But the water polo team wins the national championship in 2014. They end up getting honored at a Fullerton College football game. They had an explanation of the run that they went through, the undefeated record that they had, and the national championship that they won. All of a sudden, I've got just that little bit of information. Less than 2 weeks later, you had me do an interview with Gabriel Martinez, the head water polo coach, and I was able to do a full interview with him based on the small information that I was given. It's something that I didn't know before, didn't have any means to understand before, but now that I'm presented with a little bit of information, I can have a conversation and listen to someone else talk to me, listen to someone else inform me on that subject. It's the same thing here. Dia de los Muertos, if you're going to end up coming out to Fullerton College, or if you're here right now and you're watching maybe later on in the afternoon, trying to see what it was all about with those two cameras and those guys on the side, when you go back and you look at it, or if you're watching live right now, you're thinking to yourself, Dia de los Muertos, well, what is that? You're getting this tidbit of information. Now all of a sudden you either have interest or you learn something that you had no previous knowledge of before. Then you get to talk with a Dr. Gonzalez, as you were mentioning, Dr. Amber Gonzalez, who, if Noah ends up walking back over, we'll have here on 90.1 KBPK for an interview. Now you can talk to her and really understand what she's saying because you have that small bit of information. You're now here at Dia de los Muertos and you think, okay, well, prior, I thought it was just the Latino Halloween. Well, now I know that it's actually a celebration of culture. It's a celebration of tradition. Okay, well, now I can talk to Dr. Gonzalez and say, look, as a celebration of tradition, what does it mean for Fullerton College to have this celebration for the immediate community? And that's where conversation starts. That's where listening comes into effect. So it's a tribute to what you're saying. Coming over here or live streaming this event and speaking about it gives the opportunity for a person to just have that piece of information. It may not be a giant amount. They may not be able to retain all 500,000 pieces of information that they find tonight, but if they can retain 5, they can retain when this event started, when Fullerton College decided to start hosting the event. If they could just retain that, it starts a gateway of information and understanding.
Well, and when you talk about gateway of information and understanding, what really frightens most people, and Ryan, you just hit on it, is not knowing. It's like walking into a dark room. We're all afraid to move forward because we can't see what's in front of us. We don't know where the wall is. We don't know where the door is. We're afraid to walk straight ahead and get whacked in the forehead because the wall's right there. And in not knowing culture about other people, we are frightened of them. And we're frightened about what they're doing. They move into our neighborhood and we look at them with a cocked eye because they don't look like us. They don't act like us. They don't eat like us. And I don't understand a darn word they're saying because I don't speak their language. And they scare us. And what happens? Instead of embracing them, we want them gone. Don't be my neighbor. I can't talk to you. I don't like what you're cooking because I can smell it. And I don't really know why you got 3 other people in your house. But you come to events like this and you get to know and you go, oh, now I sort of get what they were doing towards the 1st of November. Hey, that was pretty cool. I have now a very Latino neighborhood. And I have seen certain rituals on certain days where I've called people and said, I've got Indian dancers in somebody's front lawn right now. And I've stood on my porch and watched it. It's wild. It's different. It may even be bizarre. Let's admit, we might just go, I just don't get it. But unless you try and learn it, well, ignorance the best excuse in the world not to like somebody. I just don't want to know about you. I don't like the way you look. I don't want to talk to you. And please move away from me. You come to an event like this, I'm going to go back to what you said. if you get that sliver, that taste of information, maybe you'll say to a neighbor, hey, I went to the Day of the Dead celebration at Fullerton College, and I ate some of the food there and some of the things they did. And man, I don't, it was like a party. I don't really get it. And that neighbor says, oh, here, let me explain it to you. And then you realize, well, you're no different than I am. You may look different, you may talk different, but deep down inside, you want to remember those people that passed away and embrace their lives, not mourn their lives. And that's what we do. We have a Russian sitting up by the computer who said, talked about his grandparents. We have a Serb here who parties when somebody dies. I don't wear black to funerals. I don't believe in it. I wear colors. When I did my buddy Chuck's funeral, was the main speaker, I wore my bright Hawaiian shirt. I'm sorry. I embraced it. I told stories about Chuck that made people laugh. I embraced him. I sit with you and Noah, young men that I don't look at Noah and say, ooh, gee, I hope the Mexican kid gets it. I don't look at you and say, gee, I hope the Colombian. Well, we're not going to tell anybody you're Colombian. It's Osborne's his last name, so we'll just pass you off as Irish. We've enjoyed, Corey and I've had the pleasure of coming to your house. We were there for a party for your graduation. We know your folks. I've heard stories about your grandmother. I've eaten some of the food she's made and eaten some of the food you've made. It's fun to grab a hold of that and say, hey, guess what I learned today? Guess what I learned? And the more I learn about you, the more I learn about Noah, the more I learn about Joseph, the more I get to understand you, and in understanding you, I may love you more. Then I get to make that choice. At least I understand why you do what you do.
Well, I think I want to go back to one word that Mark was talking about, ignorance. When you talk about ignorance, I think there's two different factors to it. There's unknowing and there's willful. If you are unknowing about a subject and you end up stumbling upon Dia de los Muertos, like we've seen multiple students and different faculty members who had no idea what was going on tonight. They've walked by our table and asked us, hey, what is this event that's going on? Why are there so many people here? Well, it's Dia de los Muertos. It's a Day of the Dead celebration that's taking place for the Mexican, South American, and Central American cultures here on campus. Oh, okay, thank you very much. And they end up walking through, as we also have Gil Perez walking towards us as well, a member of 90.1 KBPK. But when you look at it and you say, okay, unknowing ignorance, they have no idea that this event is taking place, that's different than willful ignorance. Willful ignorance is something that someone says, like you mentioned, I don't know these people. I don't know who they are. They don't look like me, so I'm not going to take the time to know them. I'm going to ignore that altogether. I'm going to ignore that culture. You don't want that to happen. Instead, you want those people who just stumble upon Dia de los Muertos, or maybe they saw it on a community calendar and said, I want to see what that's about. They end up walking over here and they have the opportunity to better their lives by just learning about a subject that is completely foreign to them. But like you said, it could be something completely fun that they had no idea existed.
Can you pot up the old guy to my left here?
I can indeed.
Because I want to add Gil into this conversation, Gil, because I had Noah Alvarez talk about Day of the Dead and the Hispanic background with his family, and then Ryan Osborne talking about Colombian. But you're an older guy, Hispanic. Look at his eyes light up, guys. Gil just discovered he's Hispanic. This is the good part. But I'm real serious about this. I mean, I don't know, being an older gentleman, because I'm the old white guy here. We got Joe, the young white guy here. I mean, we talk about the Hispanic heritage. I don't know how long you were in Orange County or anything like that, but what was it like being a young man that went to school here at Fullerton College that maybe people just sort of looked at and went, you're what? I mean, did that ever come into your life along the way as we celebrate Day of the Dead today?
Offhand, do you know how many years they've been doing it here?
26 now.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That long? Okay, I wasn't even aware of that, actually. I don't think it was as high profile as it is the last maybe 10, 15 years. And so the awareness is more now, way more than it was back then, that's for sure.
Are you from this area though?
I am from this area.
So where are you from originally?
I was born in Long Beach, and I grew up in the Buena Park area, and actually, most of Orange County was not Hispanic back then.
See, when I was in Anaheim, many of the friends I grew up with were Hispanic.
Okay. In the certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
overall,
Yeah.
you know, it was not that many.
So
And
for
especially if you go to South County, especially.
So for you growing up, I mean, the last name Perez, people are
Yes.
going to look at you and maybe when they look at you, may think you're Hispanic or anything. You went to Fullerton College with Ed
Yes.
Ford here
Yes.
and taught with Ed. But really, did the culture just sort of fade? We were talking about embracing the culture. So were you somebody in your family that embraced your culture, or were you somebody that grew up during that period where there weren't many Hispanics and went, I'll push it away a little because if people don't know, then they won't stare at me?
I guess I wasn't. I don't know. It just seemed natural to express it when I needed to, but I don't think there was a lot of it around, at least where I was. And I went to school in Anaheim, and again, probably, you know, just that area didn't have as much of an awareness like that. I mean, now I was in Savannah. I mean, they want to take away Johnny Rebel.
Yeah.
Because that symbolized something different now than then. So times change.
Yeah, and Gil, when you look at it, I mean, it's a matter of what we're talking about is people who don't want to know. They look at Dia de los Muertos and they think, well, that's just the Mexican Halloween. That's just something that those people do. I have no interest in doing that. When you look at Dia de los Muertos now, you say that it's a lot more exposure towards the event itself. Do you think that this can help students here at Fullerton College just kind of learn what other cultures are about?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because there should be an awareness of other cultures and traditions and so forth. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys, I wasn't following your conversation. I was on the way through here, but Coco is an example, telling the whole story, and that was a huge worldwide hit, not just in the United States. And probably that was probably a big awareness, too. So I just think it's always grown, I guess. I've noticed it more. I wasn't too aware of it on campus before. I think it was there just wasn't that awareness, and I don't think it's nowhere this big, you know, at least in my memory.
You know, Gil Perez, who's an instructor here in the radio department for Fullerton College and worked in radio for umpteen years. I mean, I'm the old guy, but Gil's catching me and was in the business.
Don't look back. I'm catching up.
I'm catching up. But, Gil, I am going to throw the radio business at you here because I listened to 88.1 down at Long Beach, the jazz station, and they have on Saturday nights the Latin jazz where they go all night long. And where are the responsibilities to media and the things like radio? I mean, yeah, you can hear the Spanish, but it's a Spanish station. You worked on the most popular pop stations in Southern California. And where were the pop Spanish stars? Were they there, or did people just shove them aside because the good old white boy was running the radio station?
You're probably closer to that. They're looking for themselves, and if they are promoting other cultures and other types of music and so forth, a lot of it is because not of reasons coming from, you know, how they feel or their heart. It's just to make them look good a lot of the times. You know, I've been in discussions with how they want to do things, and it's not the most sincere way, and it's bottom line, wherever the money is where they're going to go with it. But, you know, that's why all cultures should become aware or make an awareness and show their strengths in the numbers. So you can't be ignored.
Well, like Ryan and I were saying, too, and most people are afraid because they don't know. I mean, if you walk into a dark room, you don't take a step because it's a dark room, you don't know where the wall is. So it's the same thing when you look at society, you don't do anything because you don't know the people. So therefore, you don't want to encounter them as an individual because you don't know. So not knowing is a lot easier than actually doing something.
That's right. It's a lot easier to do. Just be closed-minded and not worry about what's outside your little box there.
Yeah. when you speak about not being closed-minded, well, we have a radio program here that Gil Perez teaches here on the radio station. Just want to thank you, Gil, for stopping by. I know you were just wandering around. I'm not
Yes,
trying
I was lost, but I saw a couple of friendly faces.
So,
boy, I should have walked by you.
There you go. Thank you, Gil. Gil
right,
Perez,
okay.
122 radio class here at Fullerton College, somebody that you want to take those classes when you come out here. I tell you what, you want to know about radio? This man's been there. He's done it. He's worked in the industry. And I tell you what, he's going to tell you the way it is. And if you don't do it the right way, he's going to tell you that too. So that was Gil Perez. Hey, I'm waiting to see if Noah Alvarez is ever going to get somebody over here. Noah, you want to come back and sit down with us, you're more than welcome to, because I need to wonder, are you going to get that interview that we've been talking about here on 90.1 KBPK, Ryan Osborne and I? Ryan, I think Gil brings up a great point, too, that, we should be more diverse. Day of the Dead, I should know about it. If there's other Latino cultures that do things, I should know about that, too, as we look at a day like tonight.
Well, just to confirm, we will have Miss Amber Gonzalez here later on the broadcast. She said she'll stop by for an interview after she gets done taking care of some behind-the-scenes stuff. But, yes, we will have that later on today.
So you wandered around the event. You've been gone. You went and grabbed us some food. Thank you very much. But you've been wandering around. So what have you seen here? And is it commercial, or do you feel like it's that interweaving of personality?
I'm going to go with the latter because you like to see all the ofrendas here. If you walk up and down the quad here at Fullerton College.
Which is, for
ofrenda.
those that may not know.
Ofrenda also translates to altar. So it's essentially an altar in which it's dedicated to someone who has deceased or passed away. And it's usually of a family member or relative of the person who set up the ofrenda or the altar. And what they have is usually the picture. So you see a lot of pictures. They have a candle up there for each person that's up on their ofrenda or their altar. Sometimes there's multiple people. Sometimes it's just dedicated to one. And then a lot of them here at Fullerton College, they have the food, the favorite food typically. And I saw different things from lentils, frijoles, beans and rice. You have chicken. There's also some steak. And what we were talking about earlier, the pan dulce, the sweet bread for the Day of the Dead. We see a lot of those on the tables of the altars here on Fullerton College. So it's really nice to see, like you said, the interwoven community here and the people that are celebrating it and using this platform to show off their family rituals and kind of show off the traditions and kind of help educate people. Because when you go and stop by an ofrenda or an altar, usually there's someone there and they're willing to talk about that person or tell them about why they have that ofrenda and altar there.
How much theologic attitude is brought to Day of the Dead? I mean, everybody likes to look at funerals and say some sort of religion is connected. So is there a theologic theme through Day of the Dead, or is it just a personal theme?
It's essentially a belief in an afterlife, right? And that people in the afterlife, once they decease, they go to the afterlife and they're able to essentially cross between the worlds, right? And on the Dia de los Muertos, on Day of the Dead, they make that trip, the people from the land of the deceased, they call it. They make that trip from the land of the deceased to the human world, the world that we partake in. Obviously, we can't see them, though. They come in spiritual form, and they come. That's why they put the food out. The food is actually, the food and the drinks is usually to not only quench the thirst, but also to feel the hunger of that long journey. So essentially, they believe the spirits get tired from the journey when they make it over here to this world.
So I'm going to throw that at you. Of course, I got my other white guy on here, so I'm protected now. It's not me sitting between two Latin people. Now we got a little white power going on this side, right? Everybody's going to say Mark actually said that, but I mean that in all jest. No, I just want to stick with that one thing, because your family, or at least people in your family, have celebrated Day of the Dead. But I'm going to go back to you as a young man. When you look at this day, what does it mean to you mentally or spiritually when you talk about Day of the Dead?
When I talk about Day of the Dead, it's a celebration of life. A lot of times when we have funerals or when people reminisce on someone that has recently passed in their family or someone that they were close to, we tend to think of them as, they mourn and they cry a lot of times and they get really sad. And it's the complete opposite here in Dia de los Muertos and the celebration of and all the traditions of Day of the Dead, because it's supposed to be more of a joyous celebration. That's why you hear the music going on in the background. That's why you see the costumes. That's why we saw the dances earlier too going on in the quad. It's supposed to be an uplifting celebration, because at the end of the day, that deceased person, they wouldn't want everyone to mourn and be sad on when they're being thought of. And so this is what the whole purpose of the Day of the Dead is, to kind of have a uplifting attitude towards death, and that way we don't fear death and maybe be so sad about death as typically is portrayed.
We, the individual that may be dying when you state that. So I got Joseph to my right, and Joseph, we've talked about the European background that you have with your family, I may have with my family. And you listen to Noah talk about this is really a celebration.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a party, man. It's a party. It's not, we're not going to say, yeah, we might shed tears because Noah or I passed away, but at the same time, we want to sit there and laugh about what Noah and I have done in our lives. And I mean, you've been around it tonight. You've been around Fullerton College in the last couple of years and doing this. So, I mean, how do you view it? I mean, you know what I mean? People are going to look at me and go, Mark, shame on you. But there's part of it that I feel like you and I are on the outside looking in, trying to understand it a little better.
Yeah, and that's fair. And earlier in the broadcast, I mentioned, for better or worse, my biggest introduction to Day of the Dead was Coco. And for better or worse, that's how I learned about a lot of it. Looking in, I think it's a great idea, a great celebration. I think it's something that more people are adopting that necessarily aren't just of Latin or Hispanic or Latino descent. I think a lot of people are going to funerals, and I'm hearing the term less ironically of, instead of a funeral, I want to have you to have a funeral for me. And I think more people are embracing that idea of, like, let's celebrate my life. Don't be sad just because I'm now a sack of bones and I'm not me anymore. Remember all the cool stuff we did, all the fun memories we had, all of, you know, whatever the good times were, and don't sit there being crying, because what good is that?
You know, Ryan Osborne and I were talking about, Noah, while you were gone, and you were out there looking for interviews and everything. And we were talking about the heritage of the Mexican families that have moved here. And, of course, Ryan was speaking it from Colombian. But youngster, you're a youngster. Ryan talked about when he grew up that I said, a lot of families that come here want to be assimilated into our society. So the young Colombian or the young Mexican gentleman goes, well, I really don't want to speak Spanish because none of my friends understand it. And I really don't want to bring Spanish or Mexican food to school because everybody else is eating peanut butter and jelly. And they want to know, what am I eating? What the heck is that? So I'm going to look at you. You grew up around the area, a young man. Did you embrace, and did your folks ask you to embrace that heritage that you grew up with? Or did your folks say, no, you don't need to bring that part of Mexico we brought with us and incorporate it into your life and keep it to your as old as Mark?
You know, that's a really good question, Mark, and I'm glad you brought this up because my parents were actually on the opposite end of the spectrum. They came over as, you know, youngsters, younger than I even am right now, during the elementary school level. And for them, they came over, you know, barely speaking any English. And they tell me stories that when they would come to, you know, the schools here in the United States, they would get made fun of for their accents and when they try to learn English. And so a big thing for my sister and I when they were raising us, we never spoke Spanish at the home. Between my parents, never. Extended family, with my grandparents I had to because they only know Spanish. With a lot of extended family, that's where I really got to practice my Spanish. But compared to a lot of other families that I met that their families and their parents are from Mexico, they all speak Spanish at home. And that was one thing my parents kind of, I wouldn't say even let us have the opportunity. It was kind of like, hey, you're going to speak English in this house. We don't want you to get made fun of in schools because I guess they may have had a traumatizing experience. But when I'm older now, I kind of almost look back and I think, you know, I could have practiced it more when I was younger. That's all up to me. I'm not going to put that on them. But at the end of the day, I wish I would know a little bit more Spanish and be a little bit more comfortable and confident while speaking Spanish. And that's something maybe I missed out compared to the other families that I know that are, you know, their parents came from Mexico where they still actively speak Spanish, nothing but Spanish at home.
Yeah, and of course, go ahead. You were going to jump in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think embracing events like this is even more important than ever. Back at Smart Start, you had a very good conversation with a journalism professor we have on campus about racism and how it's some people view more prevalent than ever. And I think embracing events like this and cultures that celebrate like this, I think, is more important than ever. People seem to forget is America, the great melting pot. And I think a lot of people don't want to think of it that way anymore, or don't want to believe it of that being that anymore.
Well, I think people are afraid. People are afraid to interact with each other because guess what? I'll lose my identity. If I hang out with Noah and Ryan, I'll lose my identity as a Serbian. So maybe I'll like their food better, and maybe I'll like their music better, and maybe I'll like their culture much more than mine. And I love being around their families. And I celebrate at Christmas time the way Noah's family does, which may be much different than a Serbian family or just a flat-out Californian may do it, being a native Californian. And people go, I don't want to lose my identity. The thing that I find very sad in my heart is when we will have young people like Noah or Ryan come into our 145 sports broadcasting class that we teach here at Fullerton College, and I'll say to many of the young people that are of Hispanic heritage, how many of you are bilingual? And I'll get 1 out of 6 will raise their hands. I always feel bad because they don't speak Serbian. My dad did. I told Ryan, my sister doesn't speak it, I don't speak it. My dad spoke Russian. Gabby Nalen speaks Czech. Corey speaks, well, he doesn't speak Czech, but I'm not sure what Corey speaks. But Corey would like to speak multiple languages. And I can't think of anything cooler. Ryan was talking about his grandmother, where she might not speak English. You can only get by so long with a relative going, hey, how's it going? And they smile at you. And that's it. You want to tell them about your life. And know when you talk about learning Spanish and somebody walks into your house, part of your family that you've never met, and you realize they don't speak English, but they have 10 million stories they could tell you. There's nothing better to be able to sit down like you can now and talk to them. And it's the same thing with you, Joseph. I mean, with a Russian heritage, do you know how exciting that would be to have somebody that you could just, if they were Russian and started talking, you could just chime in and talk to them about that? I mean, it's got to be a kick in the head for you and for our Colombian buddy over there, Ryan Osborne, to be able to embrace your native tongue.
And that's one thing with Spanish, I understand a lot more than I speak. And I love, now that my grandma, all the kids are out the nest, and all the grandkids except for one are kind of out the nest as well. So she has a lot more free time on her hands, and I like to go visit my grandparents on my mother's side. And they came from a small little town in Michoacan, Mexico, which is one of the states. And, you know, sometimes I'll just ask her, and while my Spanish may not be the best, she kind of understands what I'm asking. And she'll just go on and tell me stories, and I'll just sit there and listen. And she'll tell me the days when she used to live on the ranchero or the farm that they had. And, you know, in Mexico, she was talking about how they hand wash clothes and they didn't have washing and dryer machines until they moved here, and that was an adjustment. So I love hearing the stories like that. Like I said, I wish I knew a little bit more Spanish so I could chime in here and there. Understanding, though, like I understand her almost, up to 100%. But I love being able to communicate with extended family and be able to relate with them and them tell me stories on a certain basis.
So when you embrace Day of the Dead like you do here on 90.1 KBPK, you're not only embracing this holiday that starts November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and you do need to go out and research it yourself. Don't just listen to us yahoos here on KBPK that talk about it. Go out and look for yourself. Find out about it. Next weekend, Santa Ana, largest celebration of Day of the Dead in Southern California. Take a ride, get in your car, go down to Santa Ana, look at somebody sitting next to you and say, hey, does your family indulge in Day of the Dead? And if they do, ask them all about it. Get involved in it. Embrace it. Suck it up and realize, wow, I know something now that nobody else knew. I tell you what, for an old guy, I find nothing more exciting than listening to you tonight and hearing the stories you tell, and turn around and Joseph and I can sit here now and talk about Day of the Dead with people, and people will look at Joseph and I and go, how do you guys know about Day of the Dead? Wow, talk about education, talk about mind expanding. That's the most exciting thing in the world. And being a grandfather, I said it to Ryan Osborne, this young man next to me, could be married soon, could be a dad soon, being able to say it to his family. Same with you and Ryan. I want the world to be, and I know I've been naive all the way to this age, but I want the world to be, Joseph, one day where you can turn around and look at anybody, put your hand out, and shake their hand and really care about what happens to them. And when you embrace something like this, Noah, maybe just knowing that little engine, that little bit, maybe you'll just care just a little bit more next time you get to meet these people.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the first step into taking us to that world that back in the 60s and 70s, Gene Roddenberry was all telling us we should want to have.
You mean when you were 60 or 70 years old? Because I'm almost there. You know that, don't you?
Oh, no, I watched the reruns of Star Trek.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going back to my birthday. So we are here at Fullerton College. We are here for the celebration, the 26th celebration of Day of the Dead. I'll let you guys say it in Spanish because I'm like the Russian guy. We just sort of butcher it, don't we? Yeah. You can stop right there.
That's all right. At least you're trying. It's Dia de los Muertos.
I can't roll R's.
Well, I can roll R's. I just can't say the rest of it, you know?
There's only one R, and that's in the last word. Dia
de
los Muertos.
Muertos.
You did great, Mark.
That's great.
See? That's why my nickname's Machete, because I can speak Spanish.
The students become the teacher.
That's right. Well, I could say, I used to take Spanish. Used to be a time where you used to have to take Spanish classes in high school, where you would learn basics. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Estoy bien, gracias. Be able to at least go there. It would have been nice if people would have just pressured us all to do it. I really do think that if we'd have forced that on youngsters so that we could just talk face to face, a lot of the little harshness that goes around nowadays might have just faded into the woodwork. But that's why you come to things like tonight here at Fullerton College, to understand the other side of the rainbow, that multicolor the rainbow gives off. What's it giving off the multicolors for? That's because we live in a world of multicolors. Take a hard look at a rainbow every once in a while and see that prism of colors and realize that prism of colors is nothing more than the prisms of colors that we have here in the world. And then you get to learn about everything else, be it a religious function, be it an everyday function, or no, in your case, when you sit there, you walk into the Alvarez's house, maybe you could sit there and talk to your grandmother just enough where she'll appreciate the old white guy and the other old white guy for at least trying to speak her language. And I think that's important. We don't take enough respect for the cultures that have been here before us, our indigenous Native Americans that have been here. Ryan Osborne brought it off, then the Spanish that came here, then the Mexican national country it had. It's sort of sad that we sort of all poo-poo it, and history and political science just sort of gets shoved to the wayside. Noah, I know, as being a proud Latin male like Ryan is, and having a proud Russian stand next to me, it's sad to see heritages get lost. And here, if you come to a thing like tonight, those heritage get reborn. I got to ask you, I mean, is it sort of a kick for you to walk around? Do you feel like the little kid in the candy store tonight?
Oh, 100%, because when you look at all the altars or the ofrendas that are put on display, it's wonderful to see, because a lot of times, sometimes you don't know your neighbor even that well. We always live in this really fast-paced life, it seems like, especially in Southern California, where things move a mile a minute. And you could even know that your neighbor next door or your neighbor down the street may be here with an ofrenda or altar, and they practice this culture, but you never knew that they express these traditions and express these cultural values, because you never took the time to get to know them. So that's what's great here at Fullerton College, especially at a community college, because everyone's local. Most people are coming from Fullerton, Anaheim, La Habra, Buena Park, those areas, and all these surrounding areas. So we're all each other's neighbors, whether it's neighboring in the neighborhood, neighboring down the street, or neighboring just the city next over. These are all people that we interact with on a daily basis, whether it comes to work, whether it comes to school, whatever it comes to, we're all interacting with each other.
And the best way to become a neighbor, especially here at Fullerton College, well, the best way to do it is to come and take classes here on sportsnetusa.net or at 90.1 KBPK. And, of course, when you talk about Day of the Dead, Noah, I'm going to let you get into this conversation, because you talked about all the different things that happen on Day of the Dead. You will have the different faces that are painted on. You will see the skulls. You will see the candy. Got a gentleman sitting to my right now that, well, maybe visualizes what Day of the Dead is about. And I'm going to get up. I'm going to actually let Noah take this one over. So I'm going to get some whisper into Noah's ear. I'm going to let Noah take over this interview. And Noah, here we've got a look as the old guy is going to step out of the picture for a little while. And you get to just increase that knowledge of Day of the Dead.
So it looks like we have a former student here. Would you mind going to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jonathan De La Paz, and I was a student here. Well, at least, I should say, like, hopefully, like, next semester I will, like, return, like, probably to, like, to do some radio courses. Like, I have done some in the past, but, like, as I said, yeah, I hope to make a return someday.
Well, we're really glad to have you. We're here at the Day of the Dead celebration here on the campus of Fullerton College. And the first question we'll ask you is, what significance and what role does Day of the Dead, the celebration, play in your family?
I would just say, like, the role that it plays is that, like, much like for lots of people in this community, like, with this celebration, like, it's just, it's about, like, this family and just, like, being together. Like, it's not, like, a time for, like, to, really, like, just be sad, but, like, just say, like, yeah, just live on and, like, just celebrate what they, like, when they live their life, like, because they don't want you to just be sad and be in mourning. They just want you to just live a happy life, like, remember the good times, and just live, like, vicariously through them and, like, stuff like that.
So as you walk around the campus here at Fullerton College, you see a lot of people with face paint, a lot of people in costume, and we notice you in your face paint as well, and you have the nice blazer on. Can you explain what the importance of as your outfit that you're wearing tonight?
Well, essentially, like, what I think about, like, when it comes to the outfit is, like, essentially just, like just, but kind of, like, make it your own. And, like you're still serving, like, almost, like, remembering, like, your past relatives and, like, and your ancestors, but at the same time, you're expressing yourself, like, with your own style, but still keeping their spirit alive.
So the calavera, the calacas, the skeleton is a huge part of Day of the Dead and their tradition. Is that the reason behind, your face paint and your gloves?
Well, like, at least the gloves are kind of like a part of something that I kind of added because, like, that's just adds that little spin to the whole getup.
So when you look at the event put on by the Cadena Cultural Center here on Fullerton College, how cool is it for you, someone who celebrates the culture of Day of the Dead and Dia de los Muertos, how cool is it that Fullerton College puts on an event like this?
I'd say that it's excellent because at least, like, it shows that there's respect and there's stuff like that they're willing to put up a celebration like this for not just for the college but, like, just for the whole community, and, like, it's that sort.
I've got to ask both of you because we talked about, and I've seen some other people walk around with makeup. I did makeup for many years, and most makeup people will design their own makeup. So is there a traditional look for Day of the Dead, or is the makeup aspect of Day of the Dead something that's embraced by the individual and therefore the design becomes theirs personally? I mean, I'm asking both of you.
Well, it's like for the makeup getup that I have, I just do some research. I try to get some inspiration to more or less get an idea of how I want to do my look. But, like, essentially, like, you just, like, you get inspired, you do your own thing, or, like, you could do some, like, just do, like, a copy of what you see, like, whether in pictures on books or online, or you just come up with something on your own, or even do, like, a blend of the two.
No, I've got to ask you because, I mean, is there a sense of this is what you do if you're going to do the face makeup for Day of the Dead, or is it that embrace that I'm just going to be creative and can do what I want to do?
I think it's up to the individual, but I think a lot of times, just like any other clothing or outfits that people wear, it's all what's kind of in the trend right now. And there's been a few Latin artists that, depict a certain skeleton or depict a certain, let's say, typical makeup or typical costume that people would wear for Day of the Dead or for Dia de los Muertos. And so sometimes you see a lot of people tend to go for those portrayal, but it's great to see people express their own on an individual level of what they, expect or what they picture in their head, the celebratory traditions.
So did you make your outfit? Did you buy your coat? Did you go out and get it, or did you just sit at home and get the sewing machine out and do it yourself?
Well, the coat and gloves I had to go and buy, and same thing with this
Cummerbund?
makeshift cummerbund. But the pants and the shirt were the things that I've already had. And kind of the same thing with the face where I had to go out and get some makeup, not just to put this stuff together.
See, he's lucky he puts on makeup. I look like that every morning when I wake up. That's why I just don't own a black cat. If I did, I'd come looking like that every day I came to 90.1 KBPK. Again, we're embracing Day of the Dead. And when I say we're embracing it, that's what we're supposed to do. Isn't it embrace Day of the Dead?
Yes. Embrace the life of those who have passed in our lives, whether it's family or people that we're close to.
So that's what we've done here so far. So you went through the radio program here, got your associate's degree here at Fullerton College?
Well, essentially what I got a certificate through for film and TV.
Okay.
And part of that was that I took some of the radio classes here at Fullerton College.
And so now what are you doing now with that certificate that you gained? Are you working in the business, or are you still, like most individuals, struggling to find that place that'll be that cash return at the end of the day?
Well, like hopefully what I'm trying to do is like try to find a place within the industry, but at the same time, maybe like take a few more classes just to become a little bit more familiar with some of the techniques and some of the stuff before I get into in the industry.
So when you look at your industry, your interest is what? Front of the camera, behind the camera? What would you like to, if I could grant you the wish today, you would want to do what in the industry?
Well, as of right now, it seems to go like back and forth because I see positives on both ends. Like there's a lot of benefits to being in front of the camera, but at the same time, there's a lot being behind the camera as well.
Well, I'd rather, I worked as a talent agent for 38 years. So, and then I worked on stage in New York. And trying to find that place in front of the camera is always difficult. And behind the camera, as long as you don't need fame and glory and you just want money, it's one of the better places to be, because once you're in it, behind the camera, the only way you're going to get asked to leave is if you upset somebody. In front of the camera, you got to have the right look at the right time. So, pick and choose, enjoy the industry. It's called show business, and realize that only 5% of us actually make a living in the industry, but that's what you look at. But have a ball going after it. You enjoy doing what you do right now, transcend that over to doing the next step when you're here.
All right.
So have a great time. It's been a pleasure having you come on the air with us. That's Noah Alvarez. I'm Mark Pavlovich, and here we are, all of us, enjoying Day of the Dead. You'd look good with that makeup on your face.
You think so?
It might help you. Might have a better chance with, anybody out there looking your direction. Can you imagine Corey Nayland looking like that?
Corey Nayland? Oh.
Corey Nayland with a little makeup on his face. Little gray hair touched up there. So Ryan Osborne is over here. Joseph Pavlenko went someplace. He left us. Of course, the young woman who put this program together is going to be joining us hopefully in a while before the night ends. She said she would. Noah Alvarez sort of lined that up for us. She hasn't shown up yet. Did you try any of the food or anything while you're out here?
Yes, I've already tried some of the food, and they're pretty appetizing, I would say the least.
Yeah, Noah brought us some food over a little earlier. And did you buy anything while you were here either?
I just got here just not that long ago.
Oh, okay.
Still looking around to see what they have to offer here.
So your partner's standing over there, all in black, got half her face done up. So, little joy going on here for Day of the Dead. And, of course, you bring it up that it's not our Halloween. But yet part of Day of the Dead is our Halloween. Wouldn't you say that's true?
I would say
part of it is?
Yeah, the two holidays are very similar in certain aspects, where I think Halloween, it's a little bit more commercial, right? And it's people dressing up as anything they want, everything and anything that a person can imagine, they can dress up as, and it's a lot more fearful, right? There's a lot of fear in the sense of Halloween. They put up mazes and escape rooms, and there's all kinds of things. And even when you decorate, the whole point is to be as scary as possible. Where it's a little different as far as Day of the Dead. It's more of a celebratory tradition, and it's a little bit more uplifting. It is not as where you do dress up and you do the makeup and you do have different costumes, but you're not doing it to try and scare someone.
So that's the difference for those of you that get ready to go out on the 31st of October and dress in the aspect of Day of the Dead, realize they are two different days entirely. So when you see your Latino counterparts do Day of the Dead, they're doing it because of those who have passed. When you see your maybe white boy Halloween going on, it might be to be that vampire, that werewolf, or Freddy with the mask and the big 9-inch butcher knife there here on 90.1 KBPK. Well, Ryan Osborne, we're going to move on and see if we can finally get Amber to come on over. Eventually, she should make her way. Want to thank once again everybody coming to visit us here on 90.1 KBPK. Look at that. Well, I thought he was going to give me the hat. I was feeling really good for a second. I thought I won something. You look even better with the hat off. You know that, don't you? Gives you a better look in your face. Great outfit, great look. Enjoy the night. Enjoy Halloween, too. If this, do you do this for Halloween? That was a great question, right? You do this for Halloween, or do you give me a different look at Halloween?
Well, when it comes to Halloween, it's definitely going to be a different look.
And it might be? I didn't know yet.
Still undecided.
Okay, there we go.
It's still a work in progress.
All right.
I'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Work in progress for Halloween. Well, Ryan Osborne, we're going to move on. Maybe, is there anything going on that stage that we can look at, or is it too dark out there to take a look? Okay, Ryan Osborne's going to give us a shot at the stage. Noah, you and I are going to take a break for a second as we watch what's going on out there on 90.1 KBPK.
So welcome back to Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead here at Fullerton College. We are now joined by Dr. Amber Gonzalez, myself, Ryan Osborne, joined by Noah Alvarez. Dr. Gonzalez, when you look at Dia de los Muertos, the first thing that you got to think is this was pulled off excellently.
Thank you.
When you look at all the people who are here, in the last 10 years specifically, this event has truly taken on a life of its own. 26 years now that Fullerton College has emphasized this event, that they have been able to put this on. When you look at this year's event, what makes it special?
For me, it's really the community members who come every year, the alumni who come back, and just that sense of connection that people have with one another. And in a lot of ways, it feels like a family reunion because folks who went to school here decades ago, or folks come back who are, are now adults with children, and maybe they both went through the process of coming here. So it's like these multiple generations of folks coming specifically for this event.
And you mentioned that, I mean, it's 26 years now. So now you have the opportunity. We just spoke to Gil Perez, who has been a professor here at Fullerton College and in the radio industry for years now, well over 35 years. He remembers when this event kind of got its start, wasn't really emphasized that much, but it got its start here on campus. And you mentioned the parents who maybe they themselves came to Fullerton College. They've had kids. They're now bringing their kids to this event. Just moments ago, we had Jonathan on the air. his family has been here for a while celebrating this event as well. When you see those different generations coming here and celebrating, whether they're in the face paint, whether they're doing the dancing as well, showing off their culture, does it give you a sense of pride?
Definitely. It's definitely makes me really, really proud to work here, to be on this campus. And honestly, that was one of the reasons, if not the reason, that I felt like this was the place where I needed to be, to call home, to start my career here. Because really immediately coming to campus, so many folks who are just even employed here are alumni because they really care about this campus. And I've seen that this is my 6th year here on campus, just really seeing the connection that folks have to the campus, to each other. And it just makes me so proud to be a Hornet in a lot of ways. You know, there's a lot of things, a lot of areas where I think transformation needs to happen. And there are a lot of areas and moments that are amazing and wonderful and make me so happy to work here.
So when looking at a personal level, the Day of the Dead, the celebration of the holiday, ¿qué tan importante para usted y su familia el día?
Mi familia no celebré la Día de los Muertos cuando era niña. No más, yo aprendí de la celebración cuando estuve en colegio, en Cal Poly Pomona, para un clase. Y aprendí de celebración y qué significa. Y tengo como 15 años celebrando Día de los Muertos. Entonces es un como reclamación de mi cultura, de mi historia. Y ya, sí, tengo como 15 años celebrando ese evento.
So now as you look around and you walk around the event in the quad here, you see a lot of ofrendas, you see a lot of giving away food, the tacos, the tamales, and people selling drinks and stuff like that. How difficult was it to get this all settled?
You know, it takes a lot of work, and I will say, so one of the reasons why I'm so happy to work here and so proud to be a Hornet, it's really because of the people in my department, and that includes the faculty, that includes the students who give their time, who give their energy and their love to really making this event a success. It's definitely a family effort. We all contribute something different. We all have different skills and talents that we offer. And it's just really great to be able to draw on those different strengths that every individual has. We're a small family, we're a small team, but it's amazing to me the scale of this event is pulled off by 5 faculty and our students.
Now, when we look at this interview, we're being joined by Dr. Amber Gonzalez, who is a professor here on campus. We also want to bring in that Spanish aspect. It's multiple languages that are being spoken here tonight, and Noah just went into it moments ago. Pero, Doctora Gonzalez, cuando miras a Día de los Muertos, muchas personas piensan que, eso nomás es Halloween para los mexicanos.
Sí.
Eso es muy diferente de lo que muchas personas piensan.
Sí. Sí, es totalmente diferente, no es Halloween y actualmente, normalmente tenemos el evento en el último jueves en octubre y ese año el último jueves es Halloween y decidimos que no queríamos tener ese evento en Halloween porque hay gente que piensan que es igual y es muy diferente. Día de los Muertos es para honrar to honor sus antepasados, su familia. Es para invitar los espíritus para venir a celebrar también. Halloween es como y sabes que en los Estados Unidos los holidays son muy diferentes de los raíces. Nomás es para gastar dinero, para comprar cosas. The original meaning it's lost. Entonces no queríamos hacer algo así con ese día, los días de los muertos, porque es muy diferente, es muy especial, es nuestras raíces.
And myself, I'm Colombian. I didn't grow up with Dia de los Muertos. We don't have a Dia de los Muertos celebration. As I was telling Noah, Mark, and Joseph earlier, it was more of an emphasis on, you know, the family kind of gathered one day out of the year. It could have been June 17th. It could have been March the 19th. It was one day out of the year where the entire family got together, but it was a random day. And it wasn't necessarily about Dia de los Muertos, in which you celebrate the people who have lived before you, the people who have passed and made your family what they are today. When you look at it from the Mexican culture, from the Central American culture, all these different countries that have this opportunity to celebrate who their families are, do you also see in the people who are performing, the people who are attending, do you also see them just kind of well up with this sense of, yes, this is who I am?
Yeah, and I think one of the really amazing things about the way the event has transformed over time, because the celebration has become something very public. It's moved from, it's still celebrated in the home, it's still very private in a lot of ways, but it's moved to be a public celebration and a public spectacle in the 1970s because of the Chicanx movement and folks, you know, being outwardly proud of their culture, bringing attention to different social issues, to different topics. And so this opens up the space because it's not just about, you know, you have to be Mexican to participate and it has to look a very particular way. One thing that we find is that so many different cultures celebrate their ancestors and look to their ancestors for guidance and have some sort of either a specific day or a holiday or something in their culture or their religion that they celebrate it. And then also, you know, bringing in this idea of bringing awareness to issues. It's really about different folks finding a connection in their own way, whether it's from their culture, their religion, or bringing awareness to an issue that they care about. There's really something for everyone here.
Y si unas personas quieren saber más de ethnic studies here on campus, ¿cómo pueden hacer eso?
Bueno, tenemos clases de estudios étnicos, como 20 algo clases cada semestre. Y tenemos un amazing faculty que enseñan los clases y la gente puede tomar clases con nosotros o pueden venir a los eventos que tenemos. Tenemos Día de los Muertos, tenemos Kwanzaa en diciembre, tenemos una conferencia in in spring, not January. That's my Spanglish kicking in. So we do a lot of different public events y no es necesario ser estudiante para participar. Entonces hay varias maneras para participar.
Well, you mentioned Spanglish just a moment ago, and you know, a lot of people think, oh, Spanglish, that just means either you can't speak English or you can't speak Spanish all the way. No, it is its own language, because if you're here in Southern California, that's something that's very different that you may not even see in the rest of the country, but you do see it here in Southern California where people do speak Spanglish. It's a mixture of Spanish, a mixture of English, and really when you look at it, it's not a foreign concept as well, because you look at the English language, it's a mixture of Celtic, it's a mixture of French, it's a mixture of Latin, Germanic as well. So when you look at Spanglish, it's actually a language that is being created in our timeline.
Yeah, and I think that's the amazing thing, because language purists, people, and even linguists tell us that language is alive. It changes and it's shaped by the people who speak it, by the environment. I think Spanglish is a really interesting phenomenon because it's happened so rapidly. You know, language develops over time and people don't notice the changes as quickly. And so with Spanglish, I think because it happened what feels to people like in a short period of time, it's like a little jarring for some folks. But I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My parents don't speak Spanish. My grandparents speak Spanglish for a lot of different historical reasons. But yeah, it's definitely its own valuable language that has a meaning, that has a cadence that people understand. Like if I were to say I need to parquear my car, like you know what I'm saying. And so it's about creating words that people understand, and that's what language is. It's alive and it's so dynamic, and so it's really interesting to be able to see how Central American and Mexican and English, and depending on what neighborhood you live in, maybe other languages sort of get thrown in there too.
And that's the cool thing about the area we live in here in California, and for much of the western part of the United States, there's a lot more Spanish in our language than we think, right? Los Angeles, San Diego, San Isidro, a lot of these city names, Palo Alto up north,
Right.
they're all in Spanish, right?
Right.
So sometimes people they'll say, oh, I don't know any Spanish, but to be honest, if you get to learn some of the cities here on the western coast, whether in California, Arizona, Nevada,
California.
yeah,
Right.
it's all in Spanish.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's it, right? So just because folks don't say the words in a Spanish accent, I think once you point out to people, actually, you have a pretty extensive vocabulary of words in Spanish. It's just you don't pronounce it with an accent, but the root is still Spanish. And I think a lot of folks maybe don't notice it because it's so normalized. But I think most people who live in California, especially in Southern California, have a lot of vocab in Spanish, even if their dominant language is English.
And then one thing you mentioned earlier too, because I can relate, my parents came from Mexico, but growing up they didn't want me to learn Spanish for different reasons, and so my sister and I, we only spoke Spanish with my grandparents, with my extended family, my tios and tios from Mexico. And so I can relate to kind of how your perspective is. What's the toughest part about learning Spanish once you're a little older?
Yeah, so I didn't learn Spanish till I was in my 20s. But I grew up hearing it, so, you know, even though my parents' dominant language was English, there were still certain words that were only in Spanish, which is really interesting to me. Like, my mom knows all the commands. Like, she knows cállate and apúrate, and, right? She knows how to say hurry up and sit down and shut up, and other things like agua or just tortilla, certain things you say, right? So I think I always had an ear for it, and then just having friends from Central America and South America and different parts of Mexico, which is another thing. So my Spanglish is also like a mishmash of different types of Spanish too. So I think just having an ear for it really allowed me to learn in my 20s, but it was really hard, and I still only say that I speak 75-80%. I understand much more than I speak, but part of it too is just I think like I get a little embarrassed because I know it's not perfect, and so that prevents me, I think, sometimes from using it as much as I would like to. But I was in Mexico for 3 weeks on our last break, and I sure had to use it. So it comes in handy when I need to, right?
Once again, we're on 90.1 KBPK, the best music, the best variety. We're live here at Dia de los Muertos here on Fullerton College campus. Ryan Osborne, Noah Alvarez, now being joined by Dr. Amber Gonzalez. And Dr. Gonzalez, when you look at Dia de los Muertos, you love to see the celebration. You love to see all the people that are happy. But I do want to take it to a slightly darker place. When you look at people in what we were talking about who are ignorant, you have the people who are unknowing, and you have the people who are willfully ignorant. When you have the people who are unknowing, who just don't know about the event, versus the people who refuse to know about these types of events, and they don't want to know the culture. They don't want to get to know, maybe it's their neighbor, maybe it's that person that they see on the street, maybe it's that person who they see at their local board meeting. But when you have the people who just don't know, they aren't aware of the event, how do you reach out to those people?
Yeah, so I think I had mentioned before, you know, the event really is for everyone. And I do want to say what we see, I think, in our society is that folks are a lot more willing to consume other people's culture. So, you know, folks who will eat our food, will wear our clothes, will buy our jewelry, will dance to our music. I think folks are a lot more open, even if it's not their own culture, to participate in the cultural events and the celebrations. Now, the next level, though, is do they want to get to know their neighbor? Are they going to vote for a law that's going to negatively impact or oppress people in their community? That's, I think, a whole nother layer. So I think culture can be an entree into wanting to know people more, getting to know a culture, because it's a lot less, I don't know, I think people are a lot more open in that way. But I think there's a danger in people who just want to consume the culture and then that's it, and not really have to interact with, deal with, make friends with people who are a part of that culture. That's sort of another layer. But I think the culture can be a gateway into that deeper type of meaning and understanding. But it does take a certain amount of openness for folks to want to be able to make like meaningful connections with people.
Does an event like Dia de los Muertos reach out to that other group that says, you know what, we're not necessarily willing to learn about it, but fine, we'll attend an event like Dia de los Muertos? I mean, maybe it's a student, maybe it's someone who lives across the street. They see the lights, they hear the music, and they walk by and they go, I wonder what this is about. I'll just show up. Does an event like this end up, maybe it doesn't break down the wall completely, but does it allow you to kind of bridge a small gap?
I think so. I mean, and for me, it's really important to be able to like make meaningful connections with people. So I know, like I can speak for me as an individual, right? So like I'm trying to make connections with as many people as I can. Talk to them. What do you like about the event? What's your favorite thing? Have you gotten some tacos? Have you looked at this ofrenda for, that's bringing issue? So I just was looking at one ofrenda about like the Armenian genocide, another one that was about substance abuse, another one that was about queer activist ancestors, and just kind of and that's the educator in me, right? Trying to sort of guide people through the process, and everyone's at a sort of different place in how willing and open they are to accept and to learn and to grow, because we're all socialized in a society that doesn't value people of color, that doesn't value Latinx people, are very demonized in the media, in the government, and so I think I'm really interested in connecting with the people who are like, wait, something else is going on here. I want to know more. Like, those are the people who I'm like really interested in connecting with. But that I think is the gift that I've been given, and why I use it to be an educator to do that. I don't know that a lot of people have the patience or the willingness to do that, but that's something that I am very invested in.
Myself, growing up in Southern California, I was mentioning it to Mark earlier, you have the people who are fully invested in the Hispanic culture altogether, but then you have those people who you'll run into, and it's unfortunate, but you'll get the, oh, where are you from? I grew up in Orange. No, but where are you from? I was born in Orange. No, but where are you from? You get those types of people, you get those types of experiences. As you mentioned, you're an educator, you're a doctor as well. How do you, not necessarily comfort, but how do you talk to your students who have been through that type of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I really share my personal experience, and so the way that I teach is very much by modeling. So I am really vulnerable in the classroom, and I share a lot about my personal history and try to make connections with students. I'm also a community college alum. I went to Mount Sac. I grew up in a working class family. I'm a woman of color, and so I grew up with a very particular experience that I think a lot of my students can relate to. And so I just share that in the class, when it's appropriate, when it's relevant, like not all at once, but, if over the course of 16 weeks, sharing different things, and just trying to validate them. And so one of the things that I really love and appreciate about ethnic studies is that we center students who are marginalized in the greater society. So ethnic studies is not just about, we're going to teach you about culture and we're going to teach you about history, but it's how we do it. And for me, a big part of that is centering, what we call centering the margins, or centering students who have been marginalized in society and their stories and their experiences, whether that's students of color, whether that's queer students, students with disabilities, students who are undocumented and immigrants, all of these things, that's the center of the discussion. And everybody can learn. Once you start to center those stories, everybody can learn from that, including the students themselves, because in a lot of ways, they haven't experienced that in a classroom before. Even in the classroom, students feel marginalized to talk about their identities and their experiences in a really meaningful way. And so we definitely try to do that in ethnic studies. And it's not just about celebrating, it's about like affirming and saying, no, actually, I see you. Your experience is yours, but it's not totally unique. We can look at these as historical trends or social phenomena. Like, there's a reason why your experience is what it is. And so I think that's a beautiful thing, to be able to give students a language to name what they already know.
And you mentioned the discussion. I mean, here at KBPK, we're a diverse group. Myself, I'm Colombian. Noah is of Mexican heritage. We have a Russian and a Serbian man there. When we have Corey Nayland on, he is a black fellow who grew up in the African American culture. As an entire collective group, we're a diverse melting pot. Do you find that that's starting to, as you mentioned, the discussion, do you find that that's starting to be a little bit more common, specifically in Southern California?
I think that's my reality. I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, which it's really ethnically and racially diverse where I grew up. But I think, we have to be cautious when we talk about diversity, because race and ethnicity is like one identity, right? So I'm also noticing, do you have women?
We do.
As part of the radio station,
we
right?
do. We, in fact, our program director is Peg Berger. She is the program director for Fullerton College. We also have a lot of women who go through our classes as well.
Oh, okay, that's great. And I think that's just it, right? So we have to like broaden our scope when we talk about diversity. Like, are there queer students or faculty? Are there folks with disabilities who are represented? Undocumented people? It's not necessarily new for me, and it's definitely not new, I think, at the community college, because the community college has been the path and the entry for like a lot of students of color, a lot of working class students, because we're an open campus, and you apply and you can come. And so I don't think it's necessarily new to me, but it might feel new to folks who didn't grow up in that type of environment, because, segregation is real, and people's neighborhoods have looked the way they've looked because they've been created that way over the last, 100 years. And so when neighborhoods change and new people move in and come out, folks feel like, where did this come from, right? And not really understanding like the historical, social, political phenomenon that are causing those changes for folks.
Now, you mentioned it, and it's interesting that you pointed it out, the women in the industry. In radio, you're starting to see an upward trend of women in the industry, which is very encouraging. Huge, in fact. But historically, it's unfortunate that you don't have as many. It's kind of an uphill climb. And Mark, we call him the old guy here on the broadcast, but he said he laments it because he really hates the fact that when he ends up looking at radio stations, or at least when he grew up, he would look at radio stations and it would constantly be people who look like him and only who look like him. And that has been his biggest gripe against the industry for such a long time. When you yourself, you're a doctor, you end up here at Fullerton College as a professor of ethnic studies, but you also mentioned you're a woman, you're also a person of color. To some, that would feel like possibly a double hindrance in terms of the industry. Do you feel that your example can help other people and other students that you teach? They can look at it and say, it's not something that's out of reach. It's actually right there for the taking.
I feel like this question is a slippery slope. It's like a double-edged sword, right? Because, okay, so I identify as Chicana, a Native American. My family's from New Mexico. And I know the numbers. So I represent about 0.2% of all PhD graduates. So like my constituency is like not even a full % of PhD graduates. And so I remember seeing the first woman of color with a PhD when I was at Cal Poly and was like mind blown. And so for me, it was very much like, yes, this is possible, right? And I also know that my students, hopefully, and I encourage my students to call me Dr. G, so they know that I'm a doctor. Like, I earned a PhD, not because I'm trying to flex, but because it's like, this doesn't happen for us very often, right? And so I think it's important to have examples, but also to ground it in, but I'm not like, this doesn't mean anyone can do it, right? It's because I had mentors. It's because I have certain privileges. Like, I think because I speak English and I don't, I have a standard English accent, and because there's lots of other reasons I'm documented, right? I have certain privileges that coupled with my mentorship and being prepared and all sorts of reasons. And I guess that's like, I hear my dad in my head, right? It's like, no, you can't do anything you want. Like, there are social obstacles set up for you, and you're going to have to work harder, and you're going to have to do this and that. So I want them to see me, but also know, okay, but it's an uphill climb. It's an uphill battle. And so we need to also, so one of my goals is to work to transform these institutions that are preventing more people like me, because I'm not special. There are some brilliant, amazing people in my community who didn't have the same opportunities or privileges that I did, and that's like the only reason why.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
we appreciate everything that you've done here tonight. It's a beautiful event here going on campus. Once again, Ryan Osborne, Noah Alvarez talking with Dr. Amber Gonzalez, Professor of Ethnic Studies here on campus, one of the biggest organizers of this entire event, Dia de los Muertos, in its 26th annual, I guess I wouldn't say 26th annual event, but it's 26th edition of this annual event here at Fullerton College. Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. FC Ethnic Studies, FC Ethnic Studies, follow us. We're looking for folks who want to join us in our celebrations and in our classes. Come through.
There you go. You heard it yourself. So once again, Dr. Amber Gonzalez has been our guest live here at Dia de los Muertos. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So we're here live.
Somebody lost a set of keys.
But when you look at the night overall, we were talking with Mark Pavlovich, Joseph Pavlenko, myself, Ryan Osborne, Noah Alvarez, and it's all about Dia de los Muertos and what it means to different people, and the cultural meanings, the cultural traditions behind all of it. When you look at Dia de los Muertos, as you can see behind us, it's a lot of people, close to 1,000 to 1,300 people join Dia de los Muertos each and every year. And that number continues to climb. It's not something that you just look at and you go, okay, well, it's, people show up and they kind of have some displays and maybe some food that you can look at. No, it's something very different, because when you look at Dia de los Muertos all together, you see so many different people, so many different ethnic backgrounds. You see people of Mexican heritage, you see people of Nicaraguan heritage, Panamanians, myself, Colombian, in addition to having people from Serbian heritage, from Russian heritage as well. So when we look at Dia de los Muertos, it's a celebration of the community as a whole. That's something that's completely different, not necessarily unprecedented, but something that you don't necessarily see in today's society. So it's very encouraging to be able to talk to Dr. Amber Gonzalez, who will be joined by Joseph Pavlenko in just a couple moments. And Joseph, when you look at tonight, we've already talked with Dr. Amber Gonzalez. We have all gone through the discussion as to what our ancestors mean to us, what Dia de los Muertos kind of means to us, even if we don't know what it's about. But when you look at tonight so far, we're seeing a lot of different diversity, whether in people, but also in music as well.
Definitely with being Mr. Programming in ACC isn't fun to me, but I can appreciate holidays because the people that help around the pre-celebration of the holiday, Mark Pavlovich let us know the holiday actually takes place the first and the second and third. Okay.
as to why it was held this week. So, because normally they hold it on the final Thursday of the month, but the final Thursday of this month is Halloween. So they didn't want to have that sort of misnomer where you think, oh, well, Dia de los Muertos is Mexican Halloween because it's on the same day. That's why they pushed it back one week and they're celebrating.
I'm glad you said that. That's not something
No, but when you look at it, it's, you talk to Dr. Gonzalez, and one of the biggest things that she also mentioned was the fact that, you know, when you look at Dia de los Muertos, it's about reaching out to people who have either no idea what this event is about or don't want to know, but showed up anyways just because they saw lights, just because they heard music. It's something different that the community has to look at and say, oh, what's going on over there?
One more time it goes. I can't hear y'all. Come on. Woo! Make some noise for yourselves, y'all.
But I almost think this is
Much fun.
a celebration in a way of
Go it up.
dissent.
Go it up. A fat beat with the writing on the wall like a hieroglyph. Make a beat something, y'all. Society's outcast, the grimy and green, coming from the outskirts, the band out the big city. Boxing system hitting crazy like free the masses of subway. Freeway overpasses, hop off the lead, no name, off the youth rebellion, hip-hop, visual art, around the name and graffiti, LA to Switzerland, deep concentration, like aiming at a minute, one shot, two shots, top of the bleed, no art classes, so we learn from the streets, from the ghetto to slum, come together as one, I see you flockers in the body of some revolutionarios, who's the brain and the people's majority, control but full of hope, that's just an authority, so fuck it, the game's changed,
Yeah, I think just go back to what we were talking about earlier.
throw it up, a fat
Maybe
piece,
a tidbit of information to a person who maybe grew up not celebrating it at all. They have no idea what it is. Their families did it years ago. Maybe like what Noah was saying, his family celebrated it while they were in Mexico. They come up to California. That tradition doesn't necessarily stay the same. And we also talked to Dr. Gonzalez, who said the same thing. Part of her family that is from Mexico ended up, when they moved over to the United States, they didn't necessarily keep up that tradition as much as celebrating it on the exact day. But when you end up seeing Dia de los Muertos, as you mentioned, this is the opportunity that you can look at and you can say, okay, I didn't grow up with it, but what is it? I know I've heard of it. I know my parents have told me stories about it. But now you come out here and you say, oh, wow, okay, so this is what it is. We're celebrating our culture. We're celebrating what it is to be in my family. We're celebrating a tradition. It gives a different meaning. It puts it into perspective. Myself, I'm a visual learner. If you tell me, hey, you have to be able to plug in 3 XLRs and make sure they go into the HP140 correctly, okay, that's going to be in one ear and out the other. But if you show it to me, like Mark has multiple occasions, and Corey Nayland has done on multiple occasions, and yourself showing me how to program different music, I've got to be able to see it. It's the same thing with Dia de los Muertos, in which you can be telling stories all you want. In reality, when you see it in front of you, it takes on something.
Most everybody in the room, except for I think our small radio group was like, oh, I know that. And everybody else was
You mentioned that. It's something different because you look at the majority of the people here and they go, oh yeah, decibels. Want that sound? Perfect sound.
It's a loud thing. There's a picture of Jackhammer.
There you go. Okay, we're good to go. But to us, it means something different. To us, to Mark, to myself, to yourself, we look at it and we go, okay, if the decibel levels aren't right, we're in trouble. We could overmodulate. We could have some serious problems audio-wise. It's a very different meaning. It's a significant significant meaning for us to have a large decibel level or to have a shortage of decibels as well. It's very different for us. It's the same thing with this event. We may look at it and say, well, we didn't grow up with it. We have no idea what it is. But to the people who were here, to Jonathan, who was on the air earlier, very different.
Yeah, and I'll bring up
Recognize the name.
former radio student trying to continue through the radio program and sort of get an AA, all of those great things.
Yeah, it's an honor to come and rock tonight, do what we do, see what y'all do, and again to pay honor and tribute to those we've lost, to our family members, to our ancestors. So again, make some noise for yourself for coming out tonight and showing respect. Happy Dia de los Muertos.
Oh, they dress up like you dress up.
It's great beats and rhymes. Come on, it's great beats and rhymes. Hey, yo, I take these great beats down to the
So once again, we're here at David Los Muertos. Joseph Pavlenko over to my left. I'm Ryan Osborne. Mark Pavlovich over to my right, and Noah Alvarez. We're gonna send you back over to the stage as they are finishing up their musical celebrations, and then we'll be back to finish off Dia de los Muertos in just a little bit. So once again, you're listening to the best music, the best variety, 90.1
Take the step back, please, and let me breathe as I step into a cycle with the circle of MCs. Still everybody raps, but only few can flow. Only few with deadly skills and only few with breath can throw. We got the motifs, spin wax on techniques, SP, 1200 and NPCs. Sticky green, keep my eyes leading to my laptop. While my man freak the beat on cool editing laptop. Do I take beats, break beats down to the bone? Digging in the archive when I'm feeling at home. Hard hitting drum beats, got your eye in the zone. It's the rebels and we keep them left the microphone. Yo, I take beats, break beats down to the bone. Digging in the archives when I'm feeling at home. Hard hitting drum beats and got your eye in the zone. It's the rebels and we keep them left the microphone. This is how we do when we rock with my crew. Rebels in the gray on stage, represent for you. My name is Kenny, that's my brother MC. Together we the rebels in the gray MCs. And then we spark the match. This is how we get down with another fresh batch. Yeah, so you know we got it locked. Fullerton College, what up tonight, huh? Yeah, y'all. Yeah, y'all. Great beats and rhymes. One time for your mind. Again, that's the radio show we do. Great beats and rhymes. So tune into that on KBPK. Anybody know KBPK 90.7 FM? Woo! On the radio. Great beats and rhymes on Saturday night. Oh yeah. We just bring y'all some vibes like this. So yo, I want to give away this T-shirt. Who can rock the small? Oh man, this is gonna be tough. This is gonna be tough. Where we going? Where we going with it, MP? Should we go this side right here? Okay. Or maybe we should go in the middle. The middle got love too. All right, what about this side? Oh man, I think we gotta go this side, yeah? We got you guys, we got you guys. We got an extra large? Much love, you guys. Woo! Another short shot. Another short shot. Another short shot. We record on my tape deck, I used to stay up. The wake up show with Friday night flavors. Mamito and Stretch, we rockin' the set. The J-Rock, Taboo, rockin' the net. With DJ Red Maddox from the world famous. Visionaries, beat junkies. Rebel City Train, yeah, I'm stuck in the trees. I love to break bread, I love to break beats. Digging in the tapes, open up the cage. Throw it in the tape deck, listen to the bass. Don't leave them in the car unless you got them in the shade. Sunlight is definitely damaging your tapes. We pumping on the brakes like we travel into space. With divine forces, yeah, you know we got this. 2 to 4 a.m., yeah, we got the hotness. Cause we listen in the underground tape. Winning every 4 tracks, this is another short shot. Oh. short shot. It's an underground thing. Another short shot. It's an underground thing. We got the fresh cut, classic rap. You know the goodness. The kind of stuff when you find beneath the surface. A short shot, the first time you ever heard this. These words get all up in your ears. Come on. Listen, yeah, we pick for the label. All day. The effect they hit you later like animals. Smooth position, the perfection is technical. So under the radar that is not even measurable. That's why I play shades and 8-6. That's the beat. I'm raising hell like it was 8-6. Criminal minded at the front of my great thing. Next to hate police because I hate things. So play this at the volume at a high level. I remember cassette singles were instrumental. Never of the mixtape, they coincidental. Some people say I'm up old school, but just a little. Listening to underground tape. What it is before track mixes on another short shot. Underground tape. Another short shot. Another short shot. Oh. Now throw your hands up in the sky and wave from side to side. And if you're ready to rock with rebels to the grain, somebody say, all right. Come on, all right. Come on, all right. All right, come on. All right. Yo, who collects vinyl records? Who still collects records? Oh, you got a record player at home? All right. You gonna bump this? You gonna play it tonight? All right, this is yours. You see how that works? Yeah. Hey, records. Who still collects records out there? Anybody else? Yeah, keep that alive, man. Keep that alive. Who still listens to cassette tapes? Anybody? You got all the formats. On point. We are Rebels to the Grave once again. I think we got like 1 or 2 more songs, right? We rock 1 or 2 more songs for y'all. All right. Again, make some noise for everybody performing tonight. Listening. Again, make some noise for our ancestors right about now. Give it up, y'all. Give it up. Oh. Bounce the finger. Stuck in the trees above the ground. Stuck in the trees where the buds are found. Stuck in the trees with the breeze around. My head is stuck in the trees and it's never coming down. Too shallow and nerve instead of using the white. Rolling it up instead of using white. Through the grass and don't even go dust. Caffeine and nicotine are dangerous but still legal. Found at your corner stores and the side effects never coming back for more. So I stick to the less addiction when I get lifted. But still can I get a prescription? After hard shit I won't be taking. Under my drugs that are devastating. The poor community that won't be. They smoke the trees but never be seen. The crack and never win, they got accepted. Like things who can't keep the satisfaction. Eating cocaine until the fashion, but I keep my J cause I love relaxing. Alcohol, big business. Drugs and healthcare, the big business. The prison industry, big business. The rich and racist, I'm invested. For me, my mind is still behind the tree. I'm blazing up for those fighting for me. Natural, outdoor, now everything roll. For me, so let it be known. Stuck in the trees, above the ground. Stuck in the trees where the buds are found. Stuck in the trees with the breeze around. My head is stuck in the trees. Stuck in the trees, above the ground. The trees, above the clouds. My head is stuck in the trees and it's never coming down. Never coming down. Never coming down. Never coming down. Oh, it just went that way. Thank you. Thank you guys for rocking with us. Yeah. We got the youth out tonight. Last joint right here. We ended with some freestyles right about now. Guys feeling good again. Fullerton College. Yeah. You rocking with Rebels to the Grave, great piece of rhymes. One time, don't stop. Yeah, we getting down live on a Thursday. This is how we do it in the first place. In the worst way, you know I said it. I be leaving other MCs beheaded, but that's beyond the point. Let's get down to the truth. Gotta say much love to the youth. We rocking in the front. got no bedtime. That's how we do it. Yeah, who cares if it's a preschool night? Cause you know on the mic, we keep ripping it tight. Rebels to the grain, you know we bust. Since the crossing, yeah, it's the bus that we wreck. Our gente, la familia. Oh, that's how we do it, yeah. What up to everybody in the place? Fullerton, rebels to the grain, yeah, you know we fooling them other MCs. They can't test none of this. Great beats and rhymes with a little twist. On that Dia de los Muertos tip. Like I said, this is how we rip. On the freestyle, rebel to the grain. MP, my man stuck in the brain. I mean stuck in the trees, or even the breeze. And yeah, we've impressed MCs like that. Great beats and rhymes, what? Great beats and rhymes. Great beats and rhymes. What? Great beats and rhymes. Great beats and rhymes. Great beats and rhymes. Rebels to the grain. Peace and good night, y'all. Yeah. Thank you for rocking with us. Thank y'all. Much love to everybody in the spot, man. We felt your energy. Hope you enjoyed this set. Stuck in the trees, my brother MP.
Thank you to all the organizers who put this on tonight.
Yes, make some noise. Give it up for them, y'all.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much to all the performers. Now is the highlight. I want to see all y'all on the dance floor. I want to see all the moves right now. We're going to give it up. DJ Osile on the 1 and 2.
New, the Casper Slide Part 2, featuring the Platinum Band, and this time we're gonna get funky. Funky. Everybody clap your hands. Clap, 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 clap your hands. Clap, 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 clap your hands. All right, now, we're gonna do the basic step. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. One hop this time. Right foot, let's stop. Left foot, let's stop. Cha-cha, real smooth. Turn it out. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. One hop this time. Right foot, let's stop. Left foot, let's stop. Cha-cha now, y'all. Now it's time to get funky. To the right now. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. One hop this time. One hop this time. Right foot, 2 stumps. Left foot, 2 stumps. Slide to the left. Slide to the right. Crisscross. Crisscross. Cha-cha, real smooth. Let's go to work. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. 2 hops this time. 2 hops this time. Right foot, 2 stumps. Left foot, 2 stumps. Hands on your knees, hands on your knees. Get funky with it. Oh, yeah. Come on. Cha-cha now, y'all. Bye-bye. Turn it out. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. 5 hops this time. Right foot, let's stop. Left foot, let's stop. Right foot again. Left foot again. Right foot, let's stop. Left foot, let's stop. Freeze! Everybody clap your hands. Come on, y'all. Check it out, y'all. How low can you go? Can you go down low? All the way to the floor? How low can you go? Can you bring it to the top? Like it never stop? Can you bring it to the top? One hop. Right foot now. Left foot now, y'all. Cha-cha, real smooth. Turn it out. To the left. Take it back now, y'all. One hop this time. One hop this time. Reverse. Reverse.
There we are. We're
Slide
back.
to the left.
As we're coming to the end of Day of the Dead here at Fullerton College, we've had a really good time. We've had a few people we've had the interviews with. Ryan and Noah just had a great interview with Amber. I don't call anybody doctor. You know how I feel about PhDs, so can't do that. I got a PhD in my family, and I don't give him that much love. Dr. James R. Payne. It has been an interesting night. We have gotten the ability to see other cultures, hear about other cultures, and the largest culture in Southern California, which is the Mexican culture. And that's what tonight has been about. I want to really thank Noah Alvarez, the young man to my left, for really letting us have insight to your family and to what your family's done, to my Colombian buddy to my right, Ryan Osborne, who we've done a lot, and then to the Russian madman down at the end, Joseph Pavlenko. We've had a ball. Guys, this has been so much fun for me to be re-educated. And that's really what you three have done for me tonight. You have re-educated the old guy coming out here and having the opportunity to embrace the culture that you grew up with, the culture that you know about. And it's been a ball for me, so I want to thank all three of you for making this a really fun night with me.
No, thank you, Mark. I mean, it's been fun just to listen to everybody else's experience with it, right? We had Jonathan De La Paz, who joined us, who was a KBPK student, still looking to forward his KBPK career and radio career as well. He has a different view than we do. You know, we were just doing it as, or myself, yourself, Joseph, we're kind of doing it as outsiders.
Yeah.
Just, okay, well, we know of it. We know that it takes place. We know of the event. We studied up on it as well. But to also see him join us on the broadcast, complete with the face paint, complete with his overall dress as well, his attire, completely celebrating the entire afternoon, the entire night, it brings a realization of how much it means to people.
And not just him, the rest of his family as well,
Indeed.
dressed up in celebration of the Day of the Dead festivities going on at Fullerton College.
And how cool was it to have Dr. Amber Gonzalez to talk about not only putting on this event, but just what this event meant for her too, and also talk about a little bit of her background and what she teaches too, the Ethnic Studies Department. So it was just an overall great night. My first year doing this, so really want to thank Mark and Ryan and Joseph for allowing me to be here. But yeah, a lot of fun tonight.
I got to ask all three of you. I mean, should we embrace other cultures like this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, if there was something for the people from Vietnam or any other culture, even if it was sort of you and I, Russian, Serbian, or with Corey Nalen or Gabby Nalen, the Czech Republic, we should have more things like this so we really understand who we are and who our families were before us.
And what better place to do it here in Southern California, in Orange County, one of the most diverse places in entire United States. Because you look at, like I said earlier, down the street in Garden Grove and in Westminster, it's a lot of Vietnamese, a lot of Koreans. They celebrate Chinese New Year, and we have the opportunity to get involved with that culture and that celebration of Santa Ana, Anaheim, a lot of Latinos in that culture as well. So there's a lot of cultures just around the neighborhood, down the street, down Harbor, or whether it's down Chapman Avenue, that you can get involved with in Orange County, and I think it's the perfect place to do that.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to a thing I've said a couple times tonight, which is, America used to be the great melting pot, and everybody strove for that and wanted that and accepted that. And somewhere along the line, we let the fear of the other make us not want to welcome each other and each other's different cultures in open arms, but instead of kind of trying to keep somebody that's different from you at an arm's reach. And I think we've lost a human connection. We've lost an ability to intelligently talk about different cultures and differences, not just culturally, but like person to person. And I think coming together for events like this and being accepting of all cultures and immersing yourself in cultures not just your own is how we're going to get back to that great melting pot idea of however many years ago.
So that's going to bring us in. Don't forget, I thought the kid from Columbia had at least 30 more minutes to go, but we're going to get off the air here. Hey, tomorrow night, a little high school football here on 90.1 KBPK. I'm going to talk about our sister station Saturday, a little sports at USA.net. We got a few football games going on this weekend on sports at USA.net with Ed Ford, Fullerton College. Noah's going to be out there. Ryan's going to be out there, and Joseph along with Corey Nalen. Make sure you watch that on sports at USA.net. Maybe a little volleyball in a week or so on 90.1
Maybe
KBPK. Maybe a little more soccer. So stay tuned. Check the homepage. We got a lot more sports around the corner. Talk about diversity. Guys, Ryan Osborne and I are going to be making a trip down south to watch our women's water polo team win the national championship again. All right, I said it. The football team did it when I said it. I'm putting them on spot because the water polo coach and I saw each other the night, shook hands, and I said national championship. That's going to bring us to a great night for the Colombian, for the Mexican, for the Russian, and for the old Serb.
And very quickly, we also want to promo our social media pages and our events page. Go to kbpk.org. Take a look at the events page to see what it is that we've got coming up on the station. As Mark mentioned, we have the Gridiron Game of the Week tomorrow night. We have Fullerton College football that will be taking place on sportsnetusa.net. But also, as Joseph mentioned, soccer coming up. Maybe some water polo. We've got the coaches show as well. You need to check out the webpage. You need to check out this YouTube page that you're currently watching this live stream on as well. So again, kbpk.org. Check out the events page. And then on social media, 90.1 KBPK on Instagram and Facebook.
Exactly. And going back to what Ryan was saying, Gridiron Game of the Week, not a live stream. We don't do video on that. Tune into 90.1 on the FM dial and listen to KBPK bring you that Gridiron Game of the Week. Saturday, Fullerton College football. One of the voices of Fullerton College football sitting with us right here, Mark Pavlovich. And that event will be broadcast with the help of the Fullerton College TV department.
You want to throw in an ending too, since we're all sharing here?
I'll be there at all of them. That's what I can add.
Can I do this one more time?
Yeah, go
For
ahead.
Joseph. For Noah.
Russian.
Mexican, Ryan the Colombian, and the old Serbian guy. It has been a great night here at Day of the Dead at Fullerton College on 90.1 KBPK.